Chapter 326. The power of his martial arts is too powerful. Indeed, he is undefeatable among those below the martial monarch realm in the godly Emperor Tower. The crowd of the Emperor Palace outside the godly Emperor Tower discussed among themselves. In many people's eyes, if Qin Yu had not comprehended the martial arts of the three emperors, he would not be able to utilize the power of the martial arts left by the godly emperor. Even if he could come first, he would not be able to defeat all the martial progenitor realm geniuses so easily. Following this, Shi Lingxiao and Sun Duanqing were eliminated. The rest of the martial progenitor realm geniuses were no match for Qin Yu. In less than 10 breaths' time, all the martial progenitor realm geniuses were defeated by Qin Yu. After everyone was eliminated, the divine seal on top of Qin Yu's head had already undergone a complete transformation. It turned into a mighty divine statue, exuding a suppressive aura that could suppress the 9 heavens and 10 lands. That statue, it looks like the statue of the godly emperor of the 3 emperors. It seems like he's really going to take the treasure in the godly emperor tower. That's normal, since he's a descendant of the godly emperor. When they saw the dignified deity statue above Qin Yu's head, they were shocked. The people of the Emperor Palace were astounded. Even though they had no idea what kind of treasure was inside the godly Emperor Tower, it was something left behind by the godly emperor. It was most likely a godly artifact, now that it was left behind by the godly emperor. Crack! Qin Yu glanced at the statue above his head. Without hesitation, he pushed open the door of the tower and entered it. The tower had a total of 99 floors. Each floor was filled with challenging challenges. From the trial of one's strength to the trial of one's mind, the challenges were endless. If an ordinary martial progenitor were to enter this place, it would be impossible for them to pass the trials. This was also the reason why Gu Fengshuang had suggested to first pass through the Divine Pagoda before deciding the victor. However, to Qin Yu, these trials and tests were as easy as usual. In other words, the trials below the martial monarch realm were useless to Qin Yu. After 2 hours, Qin Yu, who was like a hot knife through butter, arrived at the summit of the Divine Pagoda. A mysterious glow appeared in front of him, which felt like a dream. It was an extremely shocking barrier. Qin Yu tried it and executed the martial arts of the 3 emperors. The statue above his head immediately absorbed the power of the martial arts of the 3 emperors, as if it had come alive. He stepped down from the sky and walked in front of the barrier of divine light. A profound seal landed on the divine light barrier. In an instant, Qin Yu arrived at a divine light space. Countless divine runes were fluttering in the sky. Beneath those divine incantations was an ancient stone tablet. Ancient incantations were carved on it, and golden runes filled the air. Qin Yu's heart's eyes after taking a closer look at it. The mantras that were dancing in the void had all broken away from the stone tablet. Buzz, buzz. As Qin Yu's eyes, Qin Yu God eyes. Qin Yu's God Qin Yu. Then, all the divine incantations in the void returned to the ancient incantations on the stone tablet, as if they were sentient. Qin Yu looked at it for a moment and reached out to touch the stone tablet. In the blink of an eye, all the curses entered Qin Yu's mind. Steal heaven's fortune. Qin Yu's eyes flashed with deep shock after he merged with those divine incantations. These divine incantations were actually an ancient taboo divine art. The heaven-stealing fortune art could steal the fortune of all living beings and steal the fortune of the heavens. Karmic luck belonged to the Tao of destiny, and it was the most profound grand Tao amongst the myriad of Taos in the universe. Even the power of space-time and the power of reincarnation could not compare to the power of providence. There was a saying in the heaven realm: as long as there was enough spirit, even an ant would be able to grow into an unparalleled divine beast. Since ancient times, those who reached the peak were all people with great luck. If one did not have enough luck, then no matter how strong the inheritance was or how powerful the divine ability was, it would not be enough. In the end, it was just drawing water with a bamboo basket. Take Qin Yu, for example. In his previous life, he was born as a medicine slave. After experiencing life and death, he had the opportunity to turn things around and become his master's disciple. Later, he obtained the ancient battle dragon art and reached the peak of the sovereign realm. Originally, he might have had the chance to reach the peak of the sovereign realm. However, when he was at the peak, he was betrayed by his brother who had known him for 100 years. He did not even have the chance to escape and had no choice but to self-destruct in the end. However, in the situation where he should have died, Qin Yu's soul obtained a chance of survival and entered the cycle of reincarnation. This life of ups and downs was because of the ethereal and unpredictable karmic luck. It was also because of this that the martial artists of the heaven realm had never given up on comprehending the Tao of karmic luck. However, the power of karmic luck was too ethereal and mysterious. Almost no one could capture its trajectory. And this Steel Heaven's fortune art could steal the karmic luck of all living beings in the universe to build its own supreme fortune. One could imagine how heaven-defying it was. To a certain extent, this Steel Heaven's fortune art was not inferior to the 9 secrets of the battle dragon. Qin Yu had heard of this divine art in his previous life, but he knew very little about it. Qin Yu even thought that the existence of the Steel Heaven's fortune art was just a rumor. After all, it was hard for him to believe that someone could enter the Tao with karmic luck and create such a divine art. What Qin Yu did not expect was that this divine art had fallen into the hands of the ancient divine emperor. Just like that, the god emperor left this technique in the emperor palace. After the shock, Qin Yu immediately calmed his mind and comprehended the Steel Heaven's fortune art. As Qin Yu comprehended, the divine light space gradually became illusory. When Qin Yu completely comprehended the Steel Heaven's fortune art, the divine light space completely disappeared. Turning back from his comprehension, Qin Yu opened his eyes. There was a dazzling light in his eyes. With a thought, Qin Yu disappeared from the divine tower. When he reappeared, he was outside the divine sovereign tower. Those people from the heavenly imperial palace that were gathered outside of the divine sovereign pagoda all looked over upon seeing Qin Yu. They wanted to see what kind of treasure Qin Yu had obtained in the divine sovereign tower. Even Sun Shiyu, Shi Jingtian, and the other descendants of the 3 sovereigns were interested. There is no fluctuation of a divine weapon. There is no aura of an emperor weapon. Could it be that the divine emperor did not leave behind the secret art? Those martial artists who were good at sensing used their secret arts to check on Qin Yu. Qin Yu left indifferently, ignoring the different gazes of the martial artists of the Emperor Palace. At this point, this year's Divine Sovereign Tower trial had ended with Qin Yu single-handedly defeating everyone. After the Divine Sovereign Tower trial, Qin Yu's reputation in the Emperor Palace had greatly increased, although there were still many people who doubted his identity as a core disciple. But among the martial ancestors, no one wanted to challenge Qin Yu. Roar! A month later in the Divine Sovereign Tower trial, Qin Yu, who was cultivating in seclusion, suddenly heard a loud dragon roar coming from the divine dragon ancient seal. Found the dragon tribe? Sensing the excitement of the dragon's soul, Qin Yu's eyes lit up. I have indeed sensed it, but it is very far away. The dragon soul was very excited. It had been sensing it for more than a few months, and it had finally sensed it. Which direction? Qin Yu stood up and left the palace. After this month of cultivation, he had officially stepped into the Nirvana first rotation martial ancestor realm. Once he subdued a dragon tribe member, his cultivation would increase by leaps and bounds. He might even advance to the martial emperor realm. Chapter 327. In the south, it might be in the southern region of the spirit state or outside of the spirit state. The dragon's soul said, "It seems that I have to summon the skeleton Ghost King back." Qin Yu thought for a moment and left the palace. If it was in the southern region of the spirit state, it would be fine. With the power of the imperial palace, he should be able to teleport there directly. But if it was outside of the spirit state, he would have to go on a long journey. You want to leave the palace? The palace master has ordered that you must ask for permission before you leave. Outside the palace, a guarding martial emperor elder stopped Qin Yu and sent someone to ask for permission from the higher-ups of the emperor palace. Qin Yu stood where he was and waited quietly. He was not surprised that the higher-ups of the emperor palace would take such measures. After all, the refining of the immortal emperor pill was still entrusted to him. Not long after, several figures came, and the leader was actually Sun Shiyu. "Where are you going?" Sun Shiyu walked up and asked. "The southern region." Qin Yu said directly. "The southern region? What are you going to do there?" Sun Shiyu was stunned. She did not expect Qin Yu to go to the southern region. That was far away. "There is something I need to do," Qin Yu said simply. "What is it?" "I can ask the elders of the palace to go for you." Sun Shiyu said. "I can only do this by myself." Qin Yu shook his head slightly and looked directly at Sun Shiyu. "This is very important to me. I must go." "In that case, I will go with you. Is that okay?" Sun Shiyu raised her eyebrows slightly, but seeing the determination in Qin Yu's eyes, she said after a moment of confrontation, "Up to you." Qin Yu said indifferently, "Follow me." Sun Shiyu gave a few instructions to the martial emperors who followed her and left with Qin Yu. But they were not going to the teleportation palace. In the emperor palace, the teleportation palace was not the only place with teleportation arrays. Important figures, such as Sun Shiyu, had their own private teleportation arrays. Considering Qin Yu's special identity, Sun Shiyu did not swagger to the teleportation palace with Qin Yu. "Where are you going to the southern region?" asked Sun Shiyu, who was leading the way. "I don't know. Let's go to the southern domain first." Qin Yu said. "Let's go to the southern region first? Do you know how big the southern region is? Our palace only has a total of 6 interdomain transportation portals in the southern domain. They were located in 6 different regions of the southern domain, and the distance between each region was different. Even with the cultivation of the martial emperor realm, it would take 1 or 2 months to break through. If you don't know the exact location, you'll waste a lot of time." Sun Shiyu stopped in her tracks and explained. To her, this was an important period for her cultivation. If not for the fact that Qin Yu was the prophesied person, Sun Shiyu would not have accompanied Qin Yu. "We'll go to whichever teleportation formation is closest to the south," Qin Yu said after hearing the news. Sun Shiyu glanced at Qin Yu and didn't say anything else. She finally realized that Qin Yu didn't seem to have a specific location at all. Soon after, the two of them stepped onto the teleportation formation that would lead them to the southern territory. Interdomain transportation portals took much longer than interdomain transportation portals. After about 10 breaths of time, Qin Yu woke up from the darkness. They appeared in an ancient city. This place was located in the central region of the southern territory of the spiritual state. It was the closest place to the south of the southern territory that Qin Yu said. After leaving the ancient palace, Sun Shiyu put on a mysterious veil. Her originally stunning appearance had become ordinary and ordinary. As one of the 4 great ghosts of the spiritual state, Sun Shiyu was quite famous in both the northern and southern regions of the spiritual state. Since she came with Qin Yu, she naturally had to disguise herself. Otherwise, it might cause a commotion. Qin Yu didn't disguise himself. He had just arrived in the spiritual state, and other than the people of the imperial palace, no one would recognize him. "Where are we going now?" After walking out of the ancient city, Sun Shiyu asked. "The south." Qin Yu flew into the sky and flew away at top speed. After coming to the southern territory, the dragon soul was countless times more sensitive to the aura of the dragon clan. Now, the dragon soul was also sure that the dragon clan had not left the spiritual state. As the two of them flew at top speed, half a month passed in a flash. Along the way, they bypassed countless forces, and their speed was greatly slowed down. After another month, Qin Yu appeared in a misty land. The mist was not ordinary mist, and it was faintly black. Demonic mist? So, Sun Shiyu casually caught a cloud of black mist and sensed a strong demonic aura from the black mist. There was also a strong poison in the demonic aura. Even Sun Shiyu's great Tao vital essence was constantly being corroded. This is the demonic sea of the southern territory. Sun Shiyu crushed the ball of fiendish fog, looked at the boundless fiendish fog area, and said slowly, "The demonic sea was one of the famous forbidden areas of the Southern Territory. This area had the ability to forbid flying. Even a martial emperor couldn't fly into the void. The demonic poison that filled this area was enough to corrode a martial emperor's great Tao of heaven and earth. This also made the demonic sea a famous forbidden area in the Southern Territory. Usually, no one would come here. What's going on? We're not too far away. Why can't I sense the exact location?" In the dragon god ancient seal, the dragon soul carefully sensed and muttered to itself in confusion. In the depths of this demonic sea, there are fluctuations of the void space. Qin Yu said after using a secret technique and sensing with rapt attention. Void space? No wonder. The dragon's soul came back to its senses. If it was a secret realm, with his current cultivation, he would have already sensed the exact location with his space-time ability. But it was different in the void space. The so-called void space referred to the space outside the heavenly domain. To be more precise, it was the space in the space wall between the heavenly domain and the outer domain. To a certain extent, the void space was somewhat similar to the Sumeru realm and the space secret realm. But the Sumeru realm and the Sumeru realm were located in the continent, while the void space was located outside the continent. The power of the laws of heaven and earth that filled the two were completely different. "Is this the place you want to come to?" Sun Shiyu asked curiously when she saw Qin Yu's expression. "That's right." Qin Yu nodded. He took a step forward and charged into the fiendish devil sea. The moment he entered the demonic sea, Qin Yu's body flashed with divine light, and an yin and yang light appeared under his feet. The yin and yang light turned into a divine ring. The divine ring spun and turned into a yin and yang vortex around Qin Yu. The demonic mist that gathered could not get close to Qin Yu at all as the yin and yang vortex spun. Yin and yang divine ring. Sun Shiyu, who was surrounded by the power of heaven and earth, recognized the divine weapon that Qin Yu had created. This divine weapon contained the power of yin and yang. It was the divine weapon that the Yin-Yang Emperor had made famous in the heavenly domain 4,000 years ago. But since the Yin-Yang Emperor disappeared, the Yin and Yang divine ring had disappeared. Even Sun Shiyu had only seen descriptions of it in ancient books and had never seen the real Yin and Yang divine ring. Qin Yu could actually create it? Could it be that he had seen the Yin and Yang divine ring in the divine sovereign tower? To be honest, Sun Shiyu was also curious about what treasure Qin Yu had obtained in the divine sovereign tower. But Qin Yu had no intention of telling her, so she did not ask. Chapter 328. Whoosh! Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu had just entered the fiendish demon sea. A fiendish ancestor-level fiendish poison beast launched a sneak attack. Sun Shiyu remained calm and ignored the attack. With a flash of divine light, a divine needle pierced through the fiendish poison beast and killed it instantly. It was Qin Yu's attack. The deeper they went, the more fiendish poison beasts appeared and their strength increased. They had reached the martial emperor realm from the martial ancestor realm. With the appearance of the martial emperor realm fiendish poison beast, Sun Shiyu, who had not attacked yet, also attacked. The martial emperor realm fiendish poison beast was extremely weak in her hands and could be killed easily. Suddenly, Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu, who were deep in the fiendish demon sea, were shocked. Oh no! Both of them looked serious and immediately dodged. Whoosh! Almost at the same time, a hurricane blade flew over their heads like a bolt of lightning. A gigantic pitch-black crack appeared in the void. A large amount of fiendish mist was swallowed, and the fiendish poison sea, which was originally filled with fiendish poison, suddenly became clear. Doubt our power? Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu both looked at the huge black crack in shock. Then they looked up at the place where the violent saber technique fluctuations came from. They saw two figures high in the sky above the fiendish demon sea. They actually ignored the fiendish demon sea's ability to seal the sky and fought fiercely. The Tao art power that could destroy heaven and earth raged. The hurricane blade that whizzed by just now was just a small aftershock. There is actually a battle between Emperor Realm Masters. Sun Shiyu's face became more and more shocked. Although she was called one of the four great sages of the spiritual state, no matter how strong her aptitude was, she was only a genius. Compared to a real Emperor Realm Master, she was not at the same level. If she had reacted a little slower just now, she would have been seriously injured even if she had a trump card. That is, although they were very far away, Qinyu, who was watching carefully, could see the two people fighting clearly. One was a silver-haired man in armor, with a long halberd in his hand. The other one was an old man in black who was surrounded by countless black, curse ancient runes. Qinyu's eyes fell on the silver-haired man. Pan Hong? He also broke through to the Emperor Realm. When the dragon's soul saw the armored silver-haired man, it was stunned and in disbelief. That silver-haired man was called Pan Hong. Like Long Hao, he was a disciple that Qinyu had taken in his previous life. In Qinyu's previous life, he had only accepted 3 disciples, and they were all in-name disciples. But he didn't expect that besides Long Hao, even Pan Hong had reached the Emperor Realm. Let's go. Sun Shiyu came to her senses, grabbed Qinyu, and retreated at top speed. Sun Shiyu originally thought that with her strength, it was sufficient to guarantee Qinyu's safety in the fiendish demon sea. But now, there was actually a battle between Emperor Masters, which was beyond her expectations. Just the aftershock of the power of Dao art almost caused them to lose their lives. If he continued to stay here, he would definitely die. Why would Pan Hong appear here? Could it be a coincidence? Qinyu came to his senses and didn't resist, allowing Sun Shiyu to carry him out of the fiendish demon sea. However, he was quite concerned about Pan Hong's appearance here. Could it be that Pan Hong also knew that there was a dragon clan here? Rumble. Not long after they left the fiendish demon sea, a destructive hurricane raged across the entire fiendish demon sea. In that destructive hurricane, there was also a gust of eerie sword intent. As the two swept across, all the fiendish demon fog was annihilated. What amazing power! Sun Shiyu looked back, her face full of shock. Even now, they were thousands of miles away from the fiendish demon sea, but she could still clearly sense the destructive fluctuations in the sky above the fiendish demon sea. Even if a martial emperor was involved in that kind of fluctuation, there would be nothing left of him. Qinyu raised his head, sensing the battle in the void in the distance, and a look of reminiscence appeared in his eyes. Thousands of years had passed, and the world had changed. The in-name disciple that followed Qinyu in the past had now become a dragon and stepped into the Emperor Realm. Qinyu couldn't help but feel a little emotional. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, in the sky above the fiendish demon sea, the silver-haired Pan Hong stabbed out with a long halberd in his hand. An incomparably terrifying Dao power erupted from the long halberd, turning into an unparalleled, destructive hurricane. The entire sky above the fiendish demon sea became a destructive, forbidden zone. The old man opposite Pan Hong had ancient black runes on his body, forming an ancient array with black runes behind him. An extremely evil Dao power aura came from that ancient array with black runes, making one's heart palpitate. The two of them fought fiercely in the void, using killing moves without regard for their own lives. From time to time, pitch-black areas appeared in the sky. Those were the chaotic black holes formed when space was broken. A mysterious and frightening power was emitted from those chaotic black holes. All Dao power and true origin were devoured by those chaotic black holes. Even Pan Hong and the black-clad old man, who were emperors, had to avoid those black hole areas. Pan Hong, if you continue to pester me, don't blame me for being impolite. The black-clad old man shouted angrily as he punched out again, destroying the dazzling halberd light. If you don't explain what happened to my junior brother, don't even think about leaving safely today. Pan Hong's well-defined face was filled with coldness. The long halberd in his hand kept changing, sometimes turning into a dragon and sometimes a phoenix. The roar of a dragon and the cry of a phoenix resounded throughout the world, and the violent hurricane that accompanied it became even more terrifying. Umph, your junior brother is courting death. He dared to provoke the sky suppression ghost emperor of my master. He's already dead. The black-clad old man sent out ancient seals with both hands, blocking the attacks that came from all directions as he snorted coldly. My junior brother wouldn't provoke two ancient emperors for no reason. Tell me everything that you know. Pan Hong's expression turned even colder, and his attacks became even fiercer. Are you really going to offend the sky suppression ghost emperor and my master for a dead person? The black-clad old man's expression changed as he felt Pan Hong's terrifying aura. If my master was still here, the ancient emperors of your two sects would be nothing before my master. Pan Hong was unmoved, and his attacks became even fiercer. I see. You don't want to know what happened to your junior brother. What you really want to investigate is what happened to your master. The black-clad old man was stunned for a moment before he reacted. If that's the case, countless thoughts flashed through the black-clad old man's mind, and a cold, killing intent appeared in his eyes. Pan Hong's third junior brother was very close. Since Pan Hong's purpose of killing him was not to find out the whereabouts of the ancient dragon emperor, Long Hao, this meant that Pan Hong definitely knew where Long Hao was. What an unexpected gain! The black-haired old man's sinister eyes flickered with ecstasy. Long Hao had gained the power to fight the sky suppression ghost emperor not long after he became a sovereign. This caused a huge uproar among the sovereigns in the Heaven region. Countless sovereigns wanted to know where Long Hao's powerful strength came from. There were even rumors that Long Hao had obtained the inheritance of his master, the dragon god sovereign. Chapter 329. This also caused countless forces to inquire about Long Hao's whereabouts. But after the battle with Ghost Emperor Jin Tian, Long Hao disappeared without a trace, and there was no news of him anymore. If Pan Hong really knew Long Hao's whereabouts, it would definitely be big news that would shock the entire Heaven Domain. After all, it was related to the inheritance of the Heaven Domain's strongest emperor. The black-robed old man was naturally excited. Since you won't say, then I'll have to do it myself. The killing intent on Pan Hong's face became even more intense. His silver hair fluttered in the wind as his left hand formed a series of seals. Behind him, a cloud of silver mist appeared. In the next moment, a deafening roar came from the silver mist. 1,000-meter-long silver rock appeared. It was Pan Hong's contract creature, an ancient beast, profound wind monster rock. Looking at the destructive aura emanating from the profound wind monster rock, it was also an Emperor Realm Master. After the profound wind monster rock appeared, it let out a soul-shaking scream and merged with Pan Hong. Not good. The black-robed old man's pupils shrank as he immediately used the pitch-black ancient array behind him to block in front of him. Pan Hong's strength was already above his, and now he had merged with the Emperor Realm profound wind monster rock. The combined strength of the two far surpassed the combined strength of two Emperor Realm Masters. Gotcha! Almost at this moment, an azure light that even an Emperor Realm Master could not see clearly flashed. The pitch-black ancient array trembled violently and then shattered with a loud bang. The azure light was unstoppable and as fast as lightning. It pierced through the black-robed old man's body. The black-robed old man's face changed abruptly as his body froze in the void. At the place where his body was pierced, ancient and mysterious forbidden spells spread all over his body, sealing his emperor's soul. This is the soul-devouring curse. The black-robed old man's eyes were filled with horror as he thought of the terrifying secret technique of the dragon god emperor. Shua! With a flash of azure light, Pan Hong immediately acted, wanting to capture the black-robed old man's emperor's soul. Pan Hong, just you wait. Explode. The black-robed old man shouted ferociously. With a bang, the black-robed old man directly turned into a pitch-black ancient forbidden spell and exploded. In the next moment, The black-robed old man's figure appeared 100 kilometers away. Without thinking, he immediately turned into a black light and flew into a pitch-black crack, disappearing without a trace. He actually escaped. Pan Hong raised his eyebrows slightly, and the Xianfeng demonic rock in his body disappeared. After pausing for a moment, Pan Hong's figure flashed and disappeared. Looks like it's over. Sun Xiyu heaved a sigh of relief when she sensed the dissipation of the heavenly Tao law. Although he was only watching the battle from 1,000 kilometers away, he could feel the vast power of an Emperor Realm Master. Unknowingly, she broke out in a cold sweat. "You're still not leaving?" Sun Xiyu was just about to suggest returning to the Sky Emperor Palace. Qin Yu set up an illusory formation around them, merging them with the surrounding terrain. Yes. Qin Yu sat cross-legged. They didn't know why Pan Hong had appeared here or why he was fighting an Emperor Realm Master. However, once their battle was over, Qin Yu still had to go to the depths of the fiendish demon sea to find the void dimension. What exactly is in the depths of the fiendish demon sea? Qin Yu was so determined to go to the depths of the fiendish demon sea where two Emperor Realm Masters were fighting. This made Sun Xiyu a little curious. "I don't know." Qin Yu shook his head slightly and didn't say anything else. He wasn't sure if Pan Hong and the black-robed old man had left the fiendish demon sea. Therefore, he planned to avoid this period of time before going to the depths of the fiendish demon sea. A strange look flashed across Sun Shiyu's eyes. She didn't quite believe Qin Yu's words. If he didn't know what was inside, why would Qin Yu want to enter the fiendish demon sea so much? He didn't even care about the battle between Emperor Realm Masters. After thinking about it, an ancient talisman appeared in Sun Shiyu's hand and merged into her palm. After that, she sat down cross-legged like Qin Yu and started meditating. Sun Shiyu wanted to see why Qin Yu wanted to go to the depths of the fiendish demon sea. Time passed day by day. After more than a month, Qin Yu was ready to leave. In this more than a month, because of the battle between two Emperor Realm Masters, this attracted countless forces to investigate, and many martial Emperor Realm spies came to the fiendish demon sea. This added a lot of liveliness to this famous forbidden area. Xiao Xiao. The thin fiendish demon mist was broken, and two figures rushed into the depths of the fiendish demon sea as fast as arrows. After the battle between Pan Hong and the black-robed old man, the fiendish poison beasts in the fiendish demon sea were basically completely wiped out. Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu continued to move forward without any hindrance. Half a day later, Qin Yu stopped in a rocky area. These rocks everywhere were formed by meteorites that fell from the sky. Qin Yu looked around the meteorite area and finally stopped in front of a meteorite. Qin Yu's eyes were filled with strong emotions. Fairy Shualan's aura. Has Fairy Shualan been here before? The dragon soul's expression changed as it sensed it. However, this made the dragon soul sure that there was a dragon clan in this place. Dragon soul, can you find the entrance to the void space with your space-time divine ability? Qin Yu restrained his emotions and asked. No, I can't sense it at all. The dragon soul carefully sensed with its space-time divine ability and shook its head. This was the difference between the Shumi's secret realm and the void space. The void space was filled with foreign world principles, unless the void space was exposed. Otherwise, it would be difficult to enter the void space. Sun Shiyu saw Qin Yu's appearance and also looked around, but found nothing. Doubt, art power, Emperor Realm. Suddenly, the faces of Sun Shiyu and Qin Yu, who were carefully searching, changed, and they immediately retreated. But at this moment, a destructive hurricane appeared in the surrounding void. Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu's footsteps stiffened. They're trapped in that destructive hurricane. What are you two juniors doing here? A voice came from the void. Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu raised their heads. In midair, a figure appeared out of nowhere, looking down at them from above. That person was none other than Pan Hong. Qin Yu raised his eyebrows slightly, but did not speak. We heard that there was a battle between Emperor Realm Masters, so we came to explore out of curiosity. We didn't mean to disturb Senior. Sun Shiyu's face was covered in cold sweat, and she hurriedly said respectfully. As she spoke, The ancient talisman in her palm was quietly unsealed. You are quite talented. Which force are you from? Pan Hong swept his gaze, skipping Qin Yu and looking at Sun Shiyu. Sun Shiyu's talent surprised him slightly. At such a young age, she already had the cultivation of a peak 6th grade martial emperor. This was not something that could be achieved with great talent. Junior Sun Shiyu is a disciple of the Heavenly Imperial Palace, and my father is Sun Guxing. Sun Shiyu immediately reported her background, and also mentioned the Emperor Realm Master behind her. Emperor Heavenly Star? The High Priest of the Heavenly Imperial Palace? Pan Hong's eyes flashed with surprise. Emperor Heavenly Star was famous in the spiritual state, so he had naturally heard of him. Even in the 9 states of the Heaven Realm, Sun Guxing was considered a famous Emperor Realm Master. Chapter 3:30. This is not a place you should be. Leave. Pan Hong flicked his finger, and the destructive hurricane immediately dissipated. He had no grudges with Sky Emperor Palace, so he did not attack the 2 juniors. Thank you, Senior. Sun Shiyu nodded respectfully and immediately prepared to leave with Qin Yu. Wait! Suddenly, Pan Hong's eyes narrowed as he stared at Qin Yu's figure. Could it be that this brat has discovered me? Qin Yu narrowed his eyes. Fortunately, before entering the Fiend Demon Sea, Qin Yu had completely retracted his dragon bloodline and dragon vein. Although Pan Hong was his disciple in his previous life, Qin Yu could not risk revealing his identity now. The Dragon Soul and the Divine Dragon Ancient Seal had also completely retracted its dragon chi. Senior, do you have any other instructions? Sun Shiyu turned back respectfully, and so did Qin Yu. Are you also from Sky Emperor Palace? Pan Hong's eyes slightly narrowed. He was carefully sizing up Qin Yu. Yes. Qin Yu nodded. Xiao. Suddenly, a green light flashed and shot into Qin Yu's body. Qin Yu seemed to be extremely frightened, and the 3 Emperors' divine power surged in his body in an attempt to resist the green light. Unfortunately, no matter how powerful the 3 Emperors' divine powers were, Qin Yu was just a martial ancestor. In the face of an Emperor Realm Dao art, he had no power to fight back. Senior, seeing this, Sun Shiyu's face changed drastically. The ancient talisman in her palm was completely unsealed, and a vast Emperor Realm aura appeared. An indestructible stone Emperor seal descended and protected her and Qin Yu. Countless stars flickered on this indestructible stone Emperor seal, like a sky full of stars. Every single ray of starlight contained the power of a Dao technique. This was a life-saving talisman given to Sun Shiyu by her father. Even an Emperor Realm Master would find it difficult to break this indestructible stone Emperor seal in a short time, unless it was someone with the same cultivation as Sun Guxing. Raise your head. Pan Hong raised his eyebrows slightly and moved his finger. The green light flew out from Qin Yu's body. However, almost at the instant Qin Yu raised his head, a dazzling blue light bloomed in Pan Hong's eyes. When their eyes met, Qin Yu's expression immediately became dazed. Am I mistaken? However, after a short while, the blue light in Pan Hong's eyes dissipated. He asked, "What's your name?" Shun Feng. Qin Yu looked terrified, but in his heart, he was relieved. The green light and blue light that Pan Hong sent into his body just now were probing his spirit veins and blood. The flickering blue light in his eyes was an illusion technique cast on Qin Yu. Although he did not know why, Pan Hong had sensed Qin Yu's identity. Leave. Pan Hong frowned and did not ask any further. He waved his hand and said, "This junior will take his leave." Sun Shiyu was a little surprised. She didn't know what Pan Hong was doing. However, seeing that Pan Hong did not intend to continue attacking them, Sun Shiyu immediately controlled the Starlight Immortal Stone Emperor Seal and cautiously left with Qin Yu. Whoosh! Not long after Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu left, a black light flashed. Then, a figure appeared. He was dressed in black and carried an ancient sword on his back. He had an extraordinary aura. If Qin Yu was here, he would definitely recognize that this person was also his disciple in his previous life, Tai Shu Kong. Qin Yu had 3 disciples in his previous life. The first disciple, Pan Hong, the second disciple, Taishu Kong, and the third disciple, Long Hao. After 1,000 years, the three disciples had all stepped into the Emperor realm. "Senior brother, what's wrong?" Taishu Kong asked curiously when he saw Pan Hong looking in a certain direction. "Nothing. I might have been mistaken." Pan Hong shook his head and came back to his senses. In that instant, Qin Yu's figure that turned and left gave him a very familiar feeling. It was like the back of his master that he had always looked up to in his previous life. However, just now, Pan Hong used the secret technique that Qin Yu had taught him to sense, but he did not find anything. To be honest, if Sun Shiyu was not Sun Guxing's daughter, Pan Hong really could not help but search Qin Yu's soul. "By the way, did you find anything this time?" Pan Hong asked. "It's still the same. There are only traces of Xiaolon." Taishu Kong was a little disappointed. Could it be that master has truly fallen? After a long silence, Pan Hong sighed. They followed Fairy Xiaolon's ancestral sacrifice and traveled through the 9 states of the Heaven Domain, billions of continents, and the extraterritorial battlefield. They tried to find a trace that his master was still alive. However, hundreds of years had passed, and they found nothing. Since Fairy Xiaolon said that master would come back alive, she must have divined something. Taishu Kong's tone was firm. After he entered the Emperor realm, he had seen Fairy Xiaolon once. It was that time that he was sure that his master was still alive. Therefore, no matter what, he would not give up. "It seems that I still have to find a way to find out what happened in the graveyard of the immortal god." Pan Hong was a little annoyed. "If I had known, I would have waited for you to come before attacking Old Devil Qianxie." If they had joined forces, Old Devil Qianxie would not have been able to escape. Back then, Ghost Emperor Zhen Tian of the Ghost Emperor Holy Island and Ancient Evil God Emperor of the Sacrificial Evil God Court. They had both brought people to the graveyard of the immortal god. Emperor Qianxie, whom Pan Hong had chased, was not only from the Sacrificial Evil God Court, but also participated in the incident back then. Therefore, Pan Hong wanted to find out about the graveyard of the immortal god from Emperor Qianxie. It's a pity that Junior Brother has been unconscious. Speaking of this, Taishu Kong sighed softly. Long Hao definitely knew a lot about their master's disappearance. Otherwise, he would not have attacked Ghost Emperor Zhen Tian directly. "Let's go." It's been more than a month, and the people of the Sacrificial Evil Court still haven't arrived. There was an 80 to 90% chance that Old Devil Thousand Evil had died in the spatial turbulence. It's a waste of a gift we specially prepared for them. Pan Hong opened his right hand, and a spiritual array disc with Emperor's might appeared. In the void, millions of ancient talismans appeared and merged into the spiritual array disc. As a breeze blew, Pan Hong and Taishu Kong immediately disappeared. So close. Only after completely leaving the Fiend Demon Sea did Sun Shiyu retract the Starlight Immortal Stone Emperor Seal. His face was filled with the color of having survived a calamity. Fortunately, their Sky Emperor Palace was a top force in the spiritual state. Otherwise, it was unknown if they could have left just now. On the other hand, Qin Yu, who was originally frightened, had returned to normal. His eyes were calm like a deep pool. "What do we do now?" In the Dragon God Ancient Seal, the dragon's soul spoke. Based on his perception for the past few months, there should be only one dragon clan in the entire spiritual state. If he gave up, Qin Yu would have to leave the spiritual state and go to the other 8 states to find the dragon clan. But judging from a situation of the Sky Emperor Palace, before refining the Immortal Emperor Pill, the higher-ups of the Sky Emperor Palace would not let Qin Yu leave just like that. Therefore, Qin Yu really could not let go of this dragon clan easily. "We can only wait for Pan Hong to leave," Qin Yu said. Other than that, there was no other good way. Besides, Qin Yu also needed time to solve the problem of not being able to enter the Sumeru realm. Otherwise, even if Pan Hong was not there, he would not be able to enter that void space. Chapter 331. "Shenfeng, are you all right?" Sun Shiyu asked worriedly as she recalled the blue light that Pan Hong had inserted into Qin Yu's body. "I'm fine." Qin Yu shook his head slightly. Do you know the martial monarch? Sun Xiu asked suspiciously after feeling slightly relieved. Sun Xiu had not paid much attention to it before. However, now that she thought about it, Sun Xiu found it strange. Pam Hong had only asked her about her background, but it was obvious that he had probed Qin Yu with a secret technique. No, I don't. Qin Yu would not admit it. Let's go back. Sun Xiu was about to ask more questions when Qin Yu flew into the sky. What is this guy doing here at the fiendish demon ocean? Although she was surprised, Sun Xiu didn't linger and immediately followed him. Sun Xiu did not notice that 2 ancient seals had been inserted into the ground when Qin Yu flew into the sky. Rumble. 3 days were gone in the blink of an eye. Qin Yu and Sun Xiu, who were flying through the air, slowed down slightly. A great battle was taking place in the rift before them. 3 martial progenitors in light blue outfits were attacking a group of martial progenitors. Although there were more than 40 martial progenitors in the group, there were casualties under the attacks of the 3 martial progenitors. It's her. Qin Yu glanced at her and raised his eyebrows. Among those 3 light blue-clothed martial ancestors, there was a sweet and graceful woman. Qin Yu actually knew her. She was Sui Wuqing, whom he had met once at the Blood Demon continent. You know the people of the Sage Divine Dynasty? Sun Xiu asked when she saw that. I helped one of their disciples during the trial at the Blood Demon continent. Qin Yu noticed Sun Xiu's strange expression and asked, What's wrong? Does the Sage Divine Dynasty hold a grudge against us? Not exactly, but the Crown Prince of the Sage Divine Dynasty has a grudge against me. Sun Xiu shook her head. The Sage Divine Dynasty was one of the top factions in the southern region, while the Sky Emperor Palace was one of the dominators in the northern region. There were conflicts between the 2 factions, but it was not a grudge. It seems that the Crown Prince is a genius. As one of the 4 great ghost geniuses of the spiritual state, not everyone was qualified to have a grudge against Sun Xiu. You don't know the Crown Prince of the Saint Dynasty? Sun Xiu asked in surprise when she heard that. I don't know. Is he very famous? Qin Yu shook his head. Don't you know who the 4 great ghosts of the spiritual state are? Sun Xiu was speechless. Qin Yu had been in Sky Imperial Palace for several months. He didn't seem to understand this basic information at all. I really don't know. Sun Xiu was one of the 4 great saints of the spiritual state. As for the other 3, Qin Yu really didn't know who they were, nor did he want to know. To Qin Yu, even if he was reborn, the geniuses of this life were nothing more than geniuses. Qin Yu had never taken him seriously. Even though he was no match for those geniuses now, for Qin Yu, it was only a matter of time before he surpassed them. Therefore, except for the world of the Emperor realm, Qin Yu had never cared about the martial ancestor realm and the martial emperor realm. The 4 great ghosts are the Saint Son of the ancient Holy Land, Tianyang Holy Land, the young master of the ancient aristocratic family, Xinyuan family, and the crown prince of the ancient divine dynasty and the Saint dynasty. Including the descendants of the 3 emperors, Sun Xiu of Sky Imperial Palace was one of the 4 great ghosts of the spiritual state. The 4 of them were the geniuses with the strongest emperor physique among the known young geniuses of the spiritual state. Therefore, they were called the 4 great ghosts of the spiritual state. You'd better understand this information when you go back, lest you offend someone in the future. Sun Xiu reminded Qin Yu. Among the younger generation of the martial emperor realm in the spiritual state, are the 4 of you the strongest? Qin Yu smiled noncommittally. Not really. Last time, the 4 of us only made it into the top 50 of the spiritual state war ranking. Sun Xiu shook her head slightly. Although they were talented, their combat strength was not the best among the martial emperor realm in the spiritual state. The spiritual state war ranking listed all the martial emperor realm geniuses among the younger generation of the spiritual state. The war ranking was changed every 3 years, and almost every time it was changed, there would be geniuses born. The 4 great ghosts, including Sun Xiu, were also named by the spiritual state war ranking. At this time, the battle at the Saint Dynasty was over. The more than 40 people left more than half of the corpses and fled. Qin Yu and Sun Xiu were about to leave. Sui Wuqing flew out from the group of 3 and greeted them. It's really you. Sui Wuqing saw Qin Yu and smiled happily. Long time no see. Qin Yu greeted her lightly. Huh? Are you from Sky Imperial Palace? Only then did Sui Wuqing see the Sky Imperial Palace logo on Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu. Because Sun Shiyu was wearing a veil, she did not see through Sun Shiyu's disguise. Yes. Qin Yu nodded slightly. Then why are you in the southern region? Are you here for the Divine Dynasty Martial Gathering? Sui Wuqing asked curiously. The Divine Dynasty Martial Gathering you mentioned is the Divine Dynasty Martial Gathering jointly held by the three Divine Dynasties in the southern region? Sun Shiyu suddenly asked. Yes, if you want to go, I can take you. Sun Shiyu invited. She came out this time to participate in the martial gathering. She just happened to meet the group of wanted bandits, so she killed them. Okay. Qin Yu was about to refuse, but Sun Shiyu agreed first. Then let's go. Sui Wuqing smiled and flew away with Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu. Are you interested in this level of martial gathering? Qin Yu asked via voice transmission in a slightly puzzled manner. If Sui Wuqing and the others participated, it should be a martial ancestor level martial gathering. Although it was jointly held by the three Divine Dynasties, its nature was probably similar to the trial at the Divine Emperor Tower. I heard that the people in charge of the Divine Dynasty Martial Gathering are the Crown Princes of the three Divine Dynasties. The Crown Princes of the three Divine Dynasties were all heavenly talents ranked in the Spiritual State Tournament last time. 3 years had passed, and Sun Shiyu's strength had improved by leaps and bounds. The Crown Princes of the three Divine Dynasties must have become stronger as well. Sun Shiyu's purpose was to test their strength. Princess, who are these two? Seeing Sui Wuqing fly away with Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu, the two people with Sui Wuqing immediately came up to them. Let me introduce you. This is Qi Suishing and Zhuit Songlong. We are both from the Saint Dynasty. This is Shun Feng, whom I mentioned last time. I'm going to take them to the Divine Dynasty Martial Gathering. Sui Wuqing introduced the two young men to Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu. Are they from the Heavenly Imperial Palace? Qi Suishing, who was holding a sword, frowned and looked at Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu. Of course, his main attention was on Qin Yu. That was because Sui Wuqing only introduced Qin Yu. Princess, the Divine Dynasty Martial Gathering is held by the southern region. Wasn't it a little inappropriate to bring two outsiders along? Moreover, they're from the Imperial Palace of the southern region. Zhuit Songlong said with a cold look in his eyes. Chapter 332. What's wrong with that? Although the martial contest is held by the three dynasties, there is no rule. However, there's no rule that only people from the three Divine Dynasties of the southern region can go and see it. Sui Wuqing snorted and ignored Zhuit Songlong. Qi Suishing and Zhuit Songlong looked at each other and followed her. Along the way, Sui Wuqing told Qin Yu and Sui Wuqing about the three dynasties. Zhuit Songlong and Qi Suishing were obviously against Qin Yu and Sui Wuqing. After returning from the Blood Demon continent, Sui Wuqing had sent people to find out about Qin Yu. She did not expect to run into him here. Qi Suishing and Zhuit Songlong felt that it was too much of a coincidence. Therefore, they were wary of Qin Yu and Sui Wuqing along the way. 5 days later, they arrived at the Fire Spirit City in the Fire Realm where the martial contest was held. Since the spiritual state battle ranking was about to be held, other than the young geniuses, numerous ancient factions had also gathered here. It could be said that the Fire Spirit City was filled with experts. As Sui Wuqing was the princess of the Saint Dynasty, they were given special treatment and stayed in a palace. Hey, isn't this Princess Sue? What a coincidence! As soon as they arrived at the palace, they heard a charming laugh. A woman in a red dress with a sexy figure and a noble temperament walked over with several people. Du Mei Xian. Sui Wuqing's face turned cold when she saw the sexy woman. You didn't even make it through the preliminaries last time. How dare you come to the martial contest this time? TSK, TSK. The red-haired woman laughed in an enigmatic manner. Humph, you'd better pray that you don't run into me in this martial contest. Otherwise, I'll pay you back 100 times. Sui Wuqing's face turned even colder. Du Mei Xian was also the princess of the Saint Dynasty. Their two mansions had always been at odds with each other, so their juniors were naturally at odds with each other. In the last martial contest, Sui Weqing was defeated by Du Meixian and was humiliated by her. Sui Weqing had been holding a grudge. You think you can do that with the trash you brought with you? Yeah, there's actually a Nirvana First Revolution martial ancestor. Huh, you even sent out such trash. Is there no one else in your Scarlet Sky mansion? Du Meixian's beautiful eyes swept over the crowd. When she saw Qin Yu, she immediately covered her mouth and laughed contemptuously. The peak martial progenitor realm subordinates behind her burst out laughing too. How dare you? Qi Suixing and Zhuo Songlong were infuriated. The worldly laws on their bodies went berserk, and they were about to attack. Du Meixian, these two are my friends. Watch your mouth. Sui Weqing stopped the two of them. After all, this was the territory of the Force Spirit God dynasty. Given her status, she could be treated with hospitality. However, if they were to cause trouble, they would most likely be mercilessly expelled. Friends? Heavenly Imperial Palace? Du Meixian sized up Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu and recognized the insignia on them. Trash in a vase. Birds of a feather flocked together. After seeing Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu's background, Du Meixian was still smiling. However, his eyes were filled with killing intent. Qin Yu was sensitive enough to sense Du Meixian's killing intent. The Golden Spirit Mansion seems to have some enmity with the descendants of the 12 war generals. Sun Shiyu saw the insignia on Du Meixian's body and sent her a voice transmission. Who is the trash? You'll know when a martial gathering begins. Sui Weqing said coldly. Then I'll wait and see. Du Meixian chuckled and left arrogantly with her entourage. I'm sorry. I have some grudges with the Golden Spirit Mansion. I've dragged you into this. Sui Weqing said apologetically to Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu. She was not sure about Sun Shiyu's strength. However, she had seen Qin Yu's combat strength with her own eyes. He could easily kill several high-level Nirvana blood demons. If anyone underestimated Qin Yu because of his cultivation, they would not even know how they died. It's fine. Qin Yu smiled faintly. You've been stepped on, and you still don't take it seriously. How admirable. Qi Suixing and Zhuo Songlong saw Qin Yu's expression, and their faces turned even uglier. They looked at Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu with even more disdain. In their opinion, if it were not for Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu, with their cultivation, how could they be looked down upon by the Golden Spirit Mansion? The martial gathering will begin in 7 days. If you have time to talk nonsense, you might as well adjust your state. Sui Weqing frowned. She knew Qin Yu's strength, so she took the initiative to befriend him. However, Qi Suixing and Zhuo Songlong repeatedly spoke disrespectfully. This made Sui Weqing somewhat regret bringing these two ignorant fellows along. Fortunately, Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu did not seem to care, which made her slightly relieved. Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu really did not care about Du Meixian, Qi Suixing, and the others. One of them was the strongest sovereign in his previous life, and the other was one of the 4 great sages of the spiritual state. In their eyes, Du Meixian, Qi Suixing, and the others were just ants that could be crushed easily. Why would they care about ants who did not know their own strength? 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. On the day of the martial gathering, the sky was still dark. The entire ancient city was like a giant beast that had just awoken from its slumber. It was a boiling cauldron of voices that soared into the sky. Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu, led by Sun Shiyu, went to the place where the martial gathering was being held. The martial gathering was jointly held by the 3 divine dynasties, and countless king mansions and major forces would come. The scale of the gathering was naturally extremely shocking. In the void, there were 10 battle arenas made of divine jade floating in the air. Around the 10 battle arenas were the positions of the forces of the 3 divine dynasties. The spectator area and the martial gathering area were separated separately. Tens of millions of martial artists gathered in this area, but there was no sign of chaos. Look, the Wuyang divine dynasty is here. Suddenly, a voice sounded, and the noise that was originally soaring into the sky immediately disappeared. In the void above Fire Spirit City, a snow-white phoenix, surrounded by snow mist, spread its wings and flew over. It was the ancient beast, the snow phoenix. Qian Yuming. Sun Shiyu's bright eyes focused as she saw through the snow mist around the snow phoenix. On top of the snow phoenix stood a figure with a vast aura. It was a handsome young man in a snow-white robe. He was the crown prince of the Wuliang divine dynasty, Qian Yuming. Qian Yuming was ranked 41st in the spiritual state war ranking. Roar! When the snow phoenix appeared, a deafening beast roar sounded, and the sky trembled. To the east of Fire Spirit City, a ferocious black tiger that was dozens of feet tall with mighty divine power flew over. A ferocious aura swept across the sky, and countless people's hearts trembled. It was the ancient beast, the black demonic tiger. It's the crown prince of the Saint Divine dynasty. On the head of the black demonic tiger, a burly figure stood with his arms crossed. The crown prince of the Saint Divine dynasty, Zhou Yuanwu, was ranked in the top 50 of the spiritual state war ranking. Zhou Wu Yuan. Sun Shiyu's eyes flashed with fighting spirit. Compared to Qian Yuming, she was obviously more interested in Zhou Yuan, who was also one of the 4 great ghosts of the spiritual state. Boom! In the sky, a huge fireball fell from the sky like a meteor, burning the sky. The fireball appeared like lightning and instantly landed in the void. A figure stepped out of the fireball. It was the crown prince of the Tianling divine dynasty, Yi Tianyu. He was ranked 39th in the spiritual state war ranking. Exclamations sounded as the crown princes of the 3 divine dynasties all gathered. Chapter 333. Brother Qian, Brother Zhou, long time no see. Yi Tianyu waved his hand, and the huge fireball turned into countless flames that entered his body. The martial gathering was held by the Heavenly Spirit Divine Dynasty, and Yi Tianyu, the crown prince, was the host. It's been 3 years since we last met. I wonder if your cultivation has improved? Qian Yuming laughed and jumped down from the snow phoenix. A hazy light flickered on his body, and the snow phoenix immediately disappeared. What? Brother Yuming, are you going to fight with Brother Yi during the martial gathering? Zhou Yuan tapped the tiger's head with his right foot. The black demonic tiger roared and turned into a black light, entering the black ancient ring on Zhou Yuan's right hand. If Brother Yi doesn't mind, I would like to exchange a few moves with you. Qian Yuming didn't hide his battle intent. In the previous spiritual state tournament, Qian Yuming lost to Yi Tianyu's curse, which was why he fell out of the top 40. He had always wanted to find Yi Tianyu and take revenge. It was an open secret in the 3 divine dynasties of the southern region. The spiritual state tournament will be held in 4 months. If Brother Qian wants to fight, I will accompany you to the end. As for today, it's a stage for the martial ancestors. Let's not steal their limelight. Yi Tianyu smiled and took a step forward, appearing in front of the judge's table. Zhou Yuan and Qian Yuming also flew down. Peak of rank 7 Martial Emperor. Middle of rank 7 Martial Emperor. Peak of rank 6 Martial Emperor. At the same time, in a martial gatherings candidate area, there was a gaze quietly looking at Yi Tianyu, Zhou Yuan, and Qian Yuming. That gaze belonged to Sun Shiyu. As expected, Yi Tianyu is the strongest among the 3. Sun Shiyu's eyes glittered. Yi Tianyu and Qian Yuming were 1 year older than her and Zhou Yuan. Their cultivation was 1 level higher than theirs. The Martial Emperor realm was the 8th level of the martial path. At this level, the difference of 1 level was like the difference between heaven and earth. Moreover, Yi Tianyu and Qian Yuming were both geniuses who could fight opponents above their level. However, a smile appeared on Sun Shiyu's face when she saw the 3's cultivation. Yi Tianyu and the other 2 had made rapid progress in their cultivation in the past 3 years. However, she was not afraid at all. 4 months later, she would become famous in the spiritual state with her strength in the spiritual state battle ranking meeting. Qianyu only glanced at him indifferently before withdrawing his gaze. These 3 people's talents were not bad, but in the central state, they would only be average talents. This was definitely not an exaggeration. In Qin Yu's previous life, he had seen those top geniuses in Zhongzhou. They had already broken through to the emperor realm at their age. In the 9 continents of the heaven domain, the central continent was where the dragon veins of the continent were located. That was where the true, monstrous geniuses were born. Crown Prince, seeing the 3 crown princes flying over, the martial emperors of the 3 divine dynasties bowed to them. How are the preparations going? Yi Tianyu's eyes flickered with white light as he looked at the martial progenitors from the 3 divine dynasties. Compared to the martial gathering of the divine dynasty 3 years ago, the number of martial progenitors this year was much higher. There would be many new faces, but at the same time, many old faces would be gone. The changes of the times and the replacement of geniuses always happened silently. No one knew how many new talents would stand out in this martial gathering of the divine dynasty and become famous in the southern region. Of course, this was the case for the martial gathering of the divine dynasty and the spiritual state battle ranking. In the last martial gathering of the spiritual state battle ranking, as new talents, they made it to the top 50 and became famous in the spiritual state. But this year, if they did not do their best, they might be trampled by the new talents again. Everyone is here. We can start the martial gathering at any time. An armored martial emperor replied respectfully. He was the person in charge of the entire martial group. Then let's start. Yi Tianyu nodded lightly. Rumble. Immediately, the 10 martial arenas of the deity realm trembled. Countless runes spread out and a vast power spread out. The 10 martial emperors from the 3 divine dynasties landed on the martial arenas of the deity realm as the judges. First of all, welcome to the martial gathering of the divine dynasty. You should know the rules of the martial gathering. There's only one rule, and that is the winner is the king. The top 3 of the martial gathering will be able to cultivate with the 3 crown princes and get the opportunity to be nurtured by the 3 divine dynasties. Here, you don't have to worry about whether your opponent is from the divine dynasty or the imperial mansion. What you need to do is to defeat your opponent to the best of your ability. This martial gathering will be the best stage for you to prove yourself. Get your all. The armored martial emperor stepped forward and encouraged the geniuses to participate in the martial gathering. Although his voice was not loud, it was clearly heard by the tens of millions of people. As his voice fell, the fire spirit city, which had been quiet, was once again filled with noise. Sui Waqing and all the martial ancestor geniuses of the 3 divine dynasties were excited and nervous. They looked at Yi Tianyu and the other 2 in the void with burning yearning and admiration in their eyes. They were even filled with fighting spirit. Among them, some wanted to cultivate with the 3 crown princes. But there were also some who wanted to challenge the 3 crown princes. Now, the martial gathering of the divine dynasty officially begins. Amid the uproar of the crowd, between the spectator area, the candidate area, and the 10 divine jade arenas, a divine rune light screen appeared on each of the arenas and then disappeared into the void. These were the barriers that the 3 divine dynasties had set up to ensure absolute fairness. Even a martial emperor would not be able to break those barriers easily. No one would be able to interfere in the process of the martial gathering. The martial gathering was divided into 3 rounds: the preliminary round, the promotion round, and the final round. The rules were quite simple. Those who lost would be eliminated, and those who won would advance. Immediately, the martial arts battles began in full swing on the 10 martial arts arenas. The martial ancestor geniuses gave it their all and began to fight. Some were able to defeat 10 with brute force. Some were able to defeat opponents with extraordinary divine abilities and secret techniques. There were also those who were evenly matched and fought fiercely. With martial emperors as judges, the martial ancestor geniuses participating in the martial gathering did not need to hold back. Even if they used all their means, they would not die under the eyes of martial emperors. Those martial emperors who were judges were all high-level martial emperors. Soon, the martial ancestor geniuses were eliminated one by one. There were rookies who were participating in the martial gathering for the first time, and there were also famous veteran geniuses. There were defeats, and naturally there were victories. The geniuses stepped on the shoulders of their opponents and continued to advance, their reputation growing stronger. Among the victorious geniuses, Su Yueqing and the other two from the Scarlet Sky Mansion, and Du Meixian and the others from the Golden Spirit Mansion naturally advanced. These two mansions were the top mansions in the Saint Dynasty. Since they could represent the two mansions to participate in the martial gathering, their strength was naturally extraordinary. Even if they encountered experts of the same level, they would still win and stand out. Chapter 334. The preliminaries lasted for 5 days and 5 nights. In the end, only 3,000 to 4,000 people out of the tens of thousands of participants advanced to the preliminaries. The weakest cultivators who came to watch were at least at the Wusheng realm. Watching the battles for 5 days was like taking a nap. As the preliminaries ended, the preliminaries began. The Divine Jade Battle Arena merged into one, and the 10 battle arenas became 5 battle arenas. The chances of top geniuses encountering each other would increase. Qin Yu was not interested in this kind of challenge. However, Sun Shiyu was watching very seriously. She was comparing the strength of the younger generation of martial ancestors from the 3 divine dynasties and the younger generation of Sky Emperor Palace. The result was obvious. The 3 divine dynasties won. Among the younger generation of Sky Emperor Palace martial ancestors, except for Qin Yu, who appeared out of nowhere, only Shi Lingxiao, Sun Duanqing, and a few others were top martial ancestors. However, Sun Shiyu had seen dozens of people who were on par with Shi Lingxiao in this martial gathering. In the entire heaven domain, the Emperor Realm and the Martial Emperor Realm were the standard to measure the strength of a force. However, the cultivation of martial ancestors, especially the younger generation of martial ancestors, was also the most important. No one could reach the sky in a single step. Whether it was the Martial Emperor Realm or the Emperor Realm, they all started from the Martial Ancestor Realm. Looking at the 3 divine dynasties full of vitality and thinking about Sky Emperor Palace, where the internal strife was getting more and more obvious, Sun Shiyu was more and more worried about the future of Sky Emperor Palace. Thinking of this, Sun Shiyu could not help but look at Qin Yu, who was sitting cross-legged beside her and had entered a state of cultivation. Sky Emperor Palace's transformation was completely dependent on whether they could find the 4 divine herbs and whether Qin Yu could refine the immortal Emperor Pill. The 178th battle of the preliminaries, Zhu Fei versus Qi Suishing. As a referee's voice rang out, 2 figures flew up to the battle arena. Countless people looked over. The 2 people fighting were from Golden Spirit King Palace and Red Sky King Palace. Zhu Fei, who was holding a long spear, and Qi Suishing, who had unsheathed his sword, were facing each other from a distance. Haha, my princess said that I can defeat you in 10 moves. However, I think that trash like you will be defeated in 3 moves. Zhu Fei was arrogant and pointed his spear at Qi Suishing, showing his arrogance. Then I want to see what you can do to me in 3 moves. Qi Suishing was so angry that he laughed instead. His sword hummed and his sword intent burst out, sweeping through the clouds. Then open your eyes wide and watch carefully. Before he finished speaking, Zhu Fei suddenly turned into an afterimage and rushed out. The long spear in his hand stabbed out furiously, and the laws of heaven and earth went berserk. A spear shadow that was over 100 feet long shot out. Break! Qi Suishing stepped forward. The sword in his hand glowed with starlight as he slashed down. The dazzling sword light tore through the void and slashed at the spear shadow. The spear shadow was instantly sliced apart. Humph! You can't even withstand a single blow. Qi Suishing sneered. He passed through the spear shadows and headed straight for Zhu Fei. For Ghost Combine. Seeing this, Zhu Fei did not panic in the slightest. Instead, he revealed a contemptuous smile. As Zhu Fei shouted, the broken spear turned into 3 incarnations that cooperated with his main body. The 4 of them combined into one and thrust their spears at Qi Suishing from 4 different directions. Boom! A loud explosion took place. Qi Suixing's expression changed greatly as he was severely injured. It seems like I've overestimated you. 2 moves are enough to deal with you. Zhu Fei's disdain grew as he turned around and left. Du Meixian wore a smug look upon seeing this. Su Yueqing's expression darkened. Qi Suixing's cultivation had reached the nirvana 9th cycle of the martial progenitor realm. However, he had not expected to be defeated by Zhu Fei, who was at the same level as him. This made Su Yueqing feel humiliated. Perhaps it was a coincidence, but after 200 rounds, the Golden Spirit King Palace and the Qigong Palace met again. Their opponents were Zhuo Sanglong and a bulky young man called Peng Yuan. In this round, the two sides had exchanged a few hundred moves. However, the result made Su Yueqing's expression turn even uglier. Zhuo Sanglong was defeated and Peng Yuan won. Du Meixian was even more smug. She did not hide her ridicule for Su Yueqing. The Golden Spirit King Palace has nurtured a few good talents. Zhou Wen nodded at the judges' table as he looked at Du Meixian and the others. Until now, the Golden Spirit King Palace was the only palace that had not been eliminated. After Qi Suixing and Zhuo Sanglong were eliminated, Su Yueqing showed her prowess. With her super strength, she defeated her opponents consecutively. She even defeated 2 princes, and her reputation grew. Du Meixian was not to be outdone. She bravely advanced all the way to the next round. Of course, the Golden Spirit King Palace and the Qigong Palace were excluded. The 3 royal families of the divine dynasties and other forces also had top geniuses who were invincible. For example, the 7th prince of the Heavenly Spirit Divine Dynasty, the 9th princess of the Saint Sage Divine Dynasty, the little prince of the Immeasurable Divine Dynasty, and so on. This caused the tens of millions of spectators to look forward to the final round. Although the number of participants in the promotion round was far less than the number of participants in the preliminary round, however, the duration of the competition far exceeded that of the preliminaries. It had lasted for 8 days. After all, no one was willing to be eliminated in the preliminary round. They all fought fiercely. In the end, more than 500 people emerged from the preliminary round and entered the final round. The final round would not begin until 2 days later. The original 5 Jadestone battle arenas had merged into one, which was 1,000 miles wide. It was big enough for martial ancestors to fight without restraint. From today onwards, the final round will begin. Only the top 10 will be able to fight for the top 3 positions, as the martial emperor announced the start of the battle. The 2 geniuses who were picked immediately rushed onto the fighting platform and began to fight fiercely. Now that it was the finals, all of the Sky Prides who had been hiding their trump cards were unleashed one after another. No one dared to hold back anymore. The battle was more exciting than the preliminary round and the advancement round. As time passed, the martial ancestors were eliminated one by one. There were also geniuses who emerged victorious. The 97th battle, Du Meixian of the Golden Spirit King Palace versus Su Yueqing of the Qigong Palace. As the martial emperor judge's voice sounded, 2 sharp auras suddenly shot into the sky. The expressions of countless onlookers also brightened. Du Meixian, the princess of the Golden Spirit King Palace, and Su Yueqing, the princess of the Qigong Palace. Both of them were top-notch martial progenitors of the younger generation in the Sage Divine Dynasty. The 2 martial ancestors of the Qigong Palace were also eliminated by the Golden Spirit King Palace. Now that the 2 of them had met, the smell of gunpowder was strong. I didn't expect you to make it to the final round this year, Du Meixian said with a smile. Her relaxed expression showed that she did not think Su Yueqing was a threat. It seems like the heavens are giving me a chance to avenge myself. The power of the law surged on Su Yueqing's body. She opened her hands, and a faint blue light surrounded her body. Su Yueqing's cultivation was originally at the Nirvana 9th refinement stage. Her cultivation immediately soared to the limit of the martial ancestor realm. Her aura soared into the sky. Unfortunately, not only will you not be able to avenge yourself, but you will also be trampled under my feet. Du Meixian formed a hand seal with her 10 fingers, and a shocking wave of fire swept out. With her, as the center, The space within a few hundred miles became distorted and burned. Chapter 335. Sui Weqing did not waste any more time and took a step forward. A light blue waterfall swept towards Du Meixian as if it wanted to bind her. Du Meixian struck out with her palm, and flames burst out, drowning the light blue waterfall. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Sui Weqing moved her right hand, and 10 light blue pearls shot out. Halfway through the flight, all of the light blue pearls exploded with a loud boom. 10 lifelike water dragons, filled with destructive power, pounced towards Du Meixian with bared fangs and brandished claws. The princess has used the water dragon pearls so quickly. Qi Suixing and Zhuo Songlong were surprised. The water dragon pearls were Su Yueqing's trump card in the last martial arts meet. She had used it as soon as the fight started. Obviously, Su Yueqing had a more powerful trump card, Golden Leaf Fire. Du Meixian was not afraid, and the flames burst out, turning into a light gold color. The Golden Leaf Fire was a spiritual fire that contained both metal and fire attributes, and its explosive power was shocking. It could even burn spiritual fires of the same level. The Golden Leaf Fire and the 10 water dragons collided in the air. Sizzling sounds were endless, and a shocking mist rose, filling the air. Swoosh! Su Yueqing's eyes flashed. The frightening law of water vibrated, and a sky-blue watermark formed in her right hand. There was a mysterious pattern on the watermark, and it was shining. Many martial emperors exclaimed when they saw the watermark formed by Su Yueqing. It is indeed the power of the totem. Du Meixian also saw the pattern on the watermark. However, a strange smile appeared on her face. It was as if she already knew Su Yueqing's trump card. Condense! Du Meixian shouted, and a golden flame bloomed between her eyebrows. Immediately, the power of the Golden Leaf Fire skyrocketed, and every wisp of flame seemed to have been tempered. The original light gold color flashed with a dark gold light, and its power underwent a huge change. Golden Leaf Fire, I beast! Du Meixian rushed forward, and as she formed a seal with her hands, the dark gold flame condensed into a golden fire beast. The golden fire beast was lifelike, as if it was a real-life creature. His golden eyes, in particular, shone with a dazzling golden light. Swoosh! The two met in an instant. The sky-blue water seal and the deep gold fire beast collided. The shocking collision that everyone expected did not occur. Su Yueqing's sky-blue water seal and the leaf fire golden-eyed beast golden flames faced off for a while. It shattered on the spot and turned into water vapor that filled the sky. How could this be? Su Yueqing's pupils suddenly shrank. With her full strength, she had no time to escape. Struck by the leaf fire golden-eyed beast, he spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying. It's completely suppressed. Zhou Bin, Yi Tianyu, Qin Yuming, Sun Shiyu, and the others, who had witnessed the battle, could tell with a single glance. Du Meixian's leaf fire golden eyes beast seemed to be the bane of Su Yueqing's watermark totem. Golden Spirit King Mansion's Du Meixian wins. The martial emperor acting as the judge announced the result of the battle. You already knew about the secret technique I cultivated? Su Yueqing stood up with difficulty. Her face was pale and her breath was in disorder. The leaf fire golden-eyed beast's attack had severely injured her. If the martial emperor judge had not stepped in and neutralized the power of the eye beam, she would not have been able to stand up. So what if I know? So what if I don't know? A loser will always be a loser. Don't even think about defeating me in this lifetime. Du Meixian's body was surrounded by rolling golden flames. She looked down at Su Yueqing with disdain. The winner was king, and the loser was silent. Su Yueqing wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. She did not argue and turned to leave the battle arena. Oh, you're leaving so soon? Du Meixian sneered when she saw this. You've already won. What else do you want? Su Yueqing said coldly. Don't you have 2 friends from the Heavenly Imperial Palace? They came from a northern region. I don't think they're just here to be spectators, right? As Du Meixian spoke, Her gaze had already shifted from Su Yueqing to Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu. Her eyes flashed with coldness. The Golden Spirit King Mansion had suffered a great loss at the hands of the heavenly Imperial Palace. They had to take revenge, although it was impossible to kill on this occasion. However, making them lose face in front of tens of millions of people was still something she could do. The heavenly Imperial Palace? Don't tell me Sun Shiyu is here? Yi Qianyu, Zhou Wuyuan, and Qian Yiming were at the judges' table. When they heard Du Meishuan's words, they all looked at the candidates for the Scarlet Sky Mansion. Soon, their gazes fell on Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu. However, after a glance, they withdrew their gazes. They did not see through Sun Shiyu's disguise. Two martial progenitors were not enough to arouse their interest. Crown Prince, the Heavenly Imperial Palace is one of the top forces in the northern region. I've admired it for a long time. Therefore, I'd like to take this opportunity to challenge the disciples of the Heavenly Imperial Palace. Su Yueqing was about to speak when Du Meixian asked Zhou Wuyuan directly. Although this is against the rules, they're guests from afar. As long as they agree, I'll allow them to fight. Zhou Wuyuan pondered for a moment and did not refuse. Since they could come from the northern region to the southern region, they must be the elite disciples of the Heavenly Imperial Palace. He also wanted to see how strong Sun Shiyu and Qian Yiming were. The Heavenly Imperial Palace is the overlord of the northern region. You two shouldn't be afraid to go up on the battle arena, right? Of course, if you don't dare, you can just admit defeat. Although Du Meishuan's words are directed at Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu. However, her gaze fell on Sun Shiyu. She did not care about Qin Yu's nirvana, first rotation, martial progenitor cultivation. Sun Shiyu, who was a high-level nirvana martial progenitor, was her target. Since you want to humiliate yourself, I'll fulfill your wish. Sun Shiyu said indifferently. Although she saw Du Meixian and the others as ants, she did not want to bicker with them. However, since Du Meixian stretched out her face for her to slap, she did not mind giving her a few slaps. Of course, with her status, she could not do it herself. Humiliate myself? Then let me see how you're going to humiliate me. Du Meixian smiled sinisterly. This concerns the reputation of the Heavenly Imperial Palace. Shen Feng, go up and spar with her. Let her know that there's always someone better than you. Sun Shiyu turned her head and looked at Qin Yu. Qin Yu opened his eyes helplessly. Sun Shiyu had even mentioned the reputation of the Heavenly Imperial Palace. As a core disciple of the Heavenly Imperial Palace, it would be unreasonable if he did not fight. You want to send this nirvana, first rotation, martial progenitor, trash, to fight me? Du Meixian was startled and her face turned ugly. Sun Shiyu was obviously looking down on her. Many of the spectating forces were also discussing animatedly. Sun Shiyu's move, wasn't it obvious that she wanted to admit defeat? Did you hear that? She said you're trash. Sun Shiyu looked at Qin Yu and smiled. Although it's the words of an ant, it's still very unpleasant. Qin Yu's figure flashed and appeared on the battle arena. He really dares to go up on the battle arena. Countless onlookers were shocked. Chapter 336. Only Su Yueqing's eyes flickered when she saw Qin Yu stepping onto the stage. She knew that Qin Yu was able to kill a few high-ranked Nirvana blood demons when he was only a 7th-layer martial progenitor. Now that he had achieved the first cycle of the Nirvana realm, his strength would be even more terrifying. Du Meixian had found herself in trouble this time. I'll give you a chance to make your move. Qin Yu stood there lazily and waved his hand at Du Meixian. You're too full of yourself. Du Meixian's eyes darkened as she made up her mind. The leaf-fire golden-eyed beast let out a roar and attacked Qin Yu with a tremendous fiery aura. Within the golden eyes, 2 beams of golden flames shot through the air. Vaguely, even the air seemed to be swallowed by the flames. Facing the attack of the leaf-fire golden-eyed beast, Qin Yu remained calm, as usual. He simply stretched out his hand and sent a palm strike at the incoming golden flame. How bold! Du Meixian wore a ferocious expression. Her leaf-fire golden-eyed beast was a spirit of spiritual fire after the soul of the golden-eyed beast merged with the golden leaf fire. Its power was enough to severely injure Su Yueqing, who had executed the water seal totem. Qin Yu, who was only a martial progenitor with the first cycle of the Nirvana realm, was trying to resist the attack of her leaf fire golden-eyed beast. He was digging his own grave. Even the judge of the martial monarch realm subconsciously prepared to intervene. Whoosh! However, as soon as Qin Yu's hand came into contact with the fiery ray, a scorching golden glow appeared. Following this, the golden flames exploded. The leaf fire golden eyes, beast's flaming eyes, were burned into nothingness by the golden flames. It did not cause any harm to Qin Yu. How is this possible? Du Meixian was astounded. Her trump card, the fiery ray of the leaf fire golden-eyed beast, had disappeared just like that? It seems like a nice flame seed. Qin Yu's eyes flickered. After absorbing the fiery ray of the leaf fire golden-eyed beast, the sentient golden heaven incinerating flame once again showed signs of restlessness, as if it wanted to devour something. Is that the flame of the dragon clan? In front of the referee's table, Yi Tianyu's expression changed. His eyes were fixed on the golden heaven incinerating flame in Qin Yu's right hand. He walked the Tao of flames and had subdued dozens of types of heavenly flames. Those spiritual fires and strange fires were fused into his lifeblood fire seed. As for Qin Yu, he was currently using the golden flame's heaven incinerating fire. However, it made his spiritual fire feel like it was being suppressed. In terms of power, Qin Yu's golden heaven incinerating flame was far inferior to his origin flame seed. However, the potential of the golden flame's heaven incinerating fire. However, he could clearly sense that it was above his life flame seed. This caused Yi Tianyu's eyes to flicker with astonishment. If he could obtain the fire of the dragon clan, the power of his life kindling would increase tremendously. Is this the golden heaven incinerating flame that he subdued? Sun Shiyu was also looking at the golden heaven incinerating flame with great interest. She knew that Qin Yu had subdued the golden flame heaven incinerating dragon. However, this was the first time she had seen Qin Yu use the golden heaven incinerating flame. It looked like its power was not bad. Leaf fire destruction formation. Du Meixian naturally couldn't stand it. Her killer move was so easily neutralized by Qin Yu. Her face was even more ferocious. Her hands quickly formed seals, and her 10 fingers moved continuously. The golden leaf fire surrounding her body was like a raging fire, crazily expanding. The surrounding dozens of miles had turned into a sea of golden flames, burning crazily. In the sea of flames, there were many flame spiritual inscriptions that intertwined and formed a mysterious fire formation. The power of the golden leaf fire immediately increased by several times. Devour. A smile appeared at the corner of Qin Yu's mouth, and a clear fire dragon seal appeared in his palm. Faintly, there was a sky-shaking dragon roar. The golden leaf fire, which was roaring and increasing in power, was immediately devoured by the golden heaven incinerating flame. The power of the two was not on the same level at all. Stop! The ferocious Du Meixian immediately sensed it. She screamed in horror and immediately withdrew the golden leaf fire. However, the fire dragon seal in Qin Yu's palm was like a black hole that could devour anything. All of the golden leaf fire was devoured in an instant. Pucci! Du Meixian was severely injured. She spat out a mouthful of blood, and her aura was chaotic and weak. Qin Yu withdrew the golden heaven incinerating flame with some pity. At the last moment, Du Meixian withdrew the golden flame fire seed. Otherwise, the power of Qin Yu's golden heaven incinerating flame would definitely increase by more than a level. Great! Su Yueqing, who had already left the arena, shouted. Seeing Du Meixian suffer, she couldn't help but shout with a satisfied expression. What's going on? Qi Suixing and Zhuo Canglong, who had looked down on Qin Yu, were now in a daze. They couldn't believe what they had just seen. Qin Yu, who was only a Nirvana first cycle martial ancestor, had not only neutralized Du Meixian's attack, he had even injured Du Meixian. After all, Du Meixian was a genius who had defeated Su Yueqing. How could Qin Yu's strength be that strong? The princess's goldenly fire was destroyed. Zhu Fei, Peng Yuan, and the others from the Golden Spirit King Palace were also dumbfounded. They knew very well how powerful Du Meishuan's goldenly fire was. It could even be said that very few people of the same cultivation level could withstand the power of the goldenly fire. How dare you destroy my spiritual fire? I'll kill you. Du Meixian, whose spiritual fire had been devoured by more than 90%, was the only one who had managed to retrieve the fire seed. Her charming face was now extremely sinister. Her eyes were burning with anger, as if she wanted to tear Qinyu into pieces. As soon as she finished speaking, Du Meixian pounced forward. The laws of heaven and earth around her were like raging waves, emitting destructive waves. More than half of the power in the sky seemed to have been drawn away by her at this moment. Obviously, she saw that Qinyu could restrain her goldenly fire. Du Meixian planned to directly crush Qinyu with her cultivation that was far stronger than Qinyu's. 5 elements forbidden fire, chaotic heaven and earth. Qinyu did not retreat at all. The laws of 5 elements and the laws of chaos surged. Du Meishuan's power of the laws of fire was suppressed by the laws of 5 elements. Then, the laws of chaos caused the void to become distorted and chaotic. Du Meishuan's berserk power of law was immediately dispersed. Qinyu had comprehended many of the laws of heaven and earth in his previous life. However, he only chose the 5 elements: chaos, massacre, lightning, and speed. Naturally, it was because these 5 had comprehended to the limit, and their power was earth-shattering. Before this, Qinyu had always used the 9 esoteric battle dragon and the 3 emperors to crush his opponents. Therefore, he rarely had the chance to use the 5 laws that he had comprehended. But now, it was just right to use it to deal with Du Meixian. Du Meishuan's strength was considered top-notch among these 400 prodigies. However, she was not considered top-notch. Her combat power was not as good as Shi Lingxiao, Sun Duanqing, and the others. Break! Du Meishuan's expression changed slightly. She shouted angrily, and the laws of heaven and earth became even more terrifying. She directly broke through the laws of 5 elements and chaos and rushed toward Qinyu in a barbaric manner. As she rushed out, a flaming sword appeared in Du Meishuan's right hand. The destructive flaming sword light slashed down to kill Qinyu. Chapter 337. Seal. Qinyu stood on the spot and flicked his finger. A ray of divine light pierced through the air and entered Du Meishuan's body. Before Du Meixian could react, her true essence and laws were sealed, and she fell heavily to the ground. This is when Du Meixian was defeated. Qinyu could clearly feel it. There was a stream of air on Du Meishuan's body that couldn't be seen with the naked eye and perception. The power of providence. Qinyu came back to his senses, and a dazzling light flashed across his eyes. The stream of air that merged into his body was the source of providence that he had plundered from Du Meixian using the Heaven's Fortune technique. In other words, the providence that Du Meixian had plundered would be added to Qinyu's body. Could it be that as long as I defeat my opponent, I can plunder their providence? Thinking of this, Qinyu looked at the hundreds of geniuses who were participating in the martial gathering, and his heart burned with passion. If he could defeat all of these people, how much providence would he be able to plunder? These days, Qinyu's thoughts were all on the dragon clan that his dragon soul had sensed. For a moment, he had forgotten about the Heaven's Fortune technique. Although recovering one's cultivation was important, plundering the power of providence was also the most important. This concerned Qinyu's future path of providence. Du Meixian was actually defeated? Looking at Du Meixian, who was sealed by the divine light, and fell to the ground. There was a moment of dead silence in the originally noisy martial arts competition. A first cycle martial ancestor easily defeated a 9th cycle martial ancestor. Although Du Meixian had suffered a setback before, they also thought that it was only because the golden flame was restrained. But now, Du Meixian was completely defeated by Qinyu. This result was out of everyone's expectations. Wasn't the scope of fighting an enemy of a higher level a bit too great? Could that be the secret sealing technique that has always been rumored in the Emperor Palace, but few people have seen it before? The eyes of Yi Tianyu, Zhou Yun, Qin Yuming, and the others all narrowed. They had fought with Sun Shiyu before, seen the indestructible Stone Emperor seal, and also the Heaven War Emperor transformation. However, he had never seen the sealing divine light before. Unexpectedly, Qin Yu actually knew how to seal the divine light. It appeared that even though Qin Yu was only a martial progenitor, he was most likely a core member of the Heavenly Imperial Palace. I thought the martial gathering held by the three divine dynasties of the southern region would be amazing. I didn't expect it to be so mediocre. At this moment, Qin Yu shook his head. The calm and disappointed voice was clearly heard by the martial progenitor realm geniuses in the finals. Damn it. Du Mei Xian, who had just been defeated and left the arena, stopped in her tracks as she gritted her teeth. That's all. Oomph. You actually dare to speak such arrogant words. Do you think you can look down on all the martial progenitors in the southern region just because you defeated Du Mei Xian? As Qin Yu's words rang out, the quiet fighting arena immediately became filled with murderous intent. Countless ruthless and cold gazes gathered on Qin Yu. What the hell is this guy doing? Sui Weqing, who was initially cheering for Qin Yu after witnessing him defeating Du Mei Xian, froze. Qi Suxing and Zhuo Canglong were petrified too. Even Sun Shiyu's eyes flickered. Uttering such infuriating words in their territory, was Qin Yu planning to leave the arena on a stretcher? Yi Tianyu, Zhou Yuan, and Qin Yuming raised their brows, as they were clueless about Qin Yu's intention. Could it be that he was trying to test the strength of the younger generation of the southern domain, and that was why he spoke such arrogant words? But what was the point of testing the strength of the martial progenitors? Besides, the martial gathering was supposed to be a duel between them, thus there was no need for him to do so. Or was he just trying to provoke them? I'm sorry, I meant that you guys aren't that bad. Ugh, please continue. Qin Yu immediately corrected himself as if he was aware of his mistake, before he left the arena. We aren't that bad. This is the southern region, not the northern region. Who do you think you are to be so arrogant? I want to see what kind of ability you have to be so arrogant and despotic. However, Qin Yu's words were like adding fuel to the fire. It was better than not explaining himself at all. The young cultivators of the three divine dynasties who were already enraged were now filled with murderous intent. If looks could kill, then Qin Yu would have been riddled with holes by now. He couldn't be more dead. Hold it right there. A furious roar was heard as a figure flew toward Qin Yu from the Golden Spirit King mansion with a long spear in his hand. It was Zhu Fei, who had defeated Qi Suxing earlier. He was glaring at Qin Yu. Even though my princess lost to you, you've defeated her. However, you're being too arrogant by saying that this is all the martial artists of the southern region have to offer. Let me have a taste of the ultimate skills of the Emperor Heaven Palace. Zhu Fei's voice was filled with anger. No one from the southern region would be able to hold back after hearing Qin Yu's words. Zhu Fei had a reason to stand up for Du Mei Xian, so he directly attacked Qin Yu. You're no match for me. Let's change to something else. Qin Yu glanced at Zhu Fei and said, Take this. However, before he could finish his sentence, Zhu Fei, whose eyes were twitching violently, rushed out. Forgo Sin 1. Zhu Fei used a killing move as soon as he attacked. His true essence exploded, and the laws of heaven and earth swept out. Three lifelike avatars appeared. The main body and the avatars attacked Qin Yu from three directions. The Forgo Sin 1 was the secret skill that Qi Suxing had used previously. Seal. Qin Yu glanced at them, and his eyes flashed. He used the law of speed and rushed out as fast as lightning. He slapped one of the avatars with his palm. You actually saw through my main body. Zhu Fei was shocked. He originally thought that Qin Yu would attack his main body. He did not expect Qin Yu to be so observant. However, Zhu Fei's attack did not stop at all. His avatars had half the strength of his main body. With the three of them combined, even if his main body was sealed, the strength of his avatars was enough to defeat Qin Yu. Upon having this thought, a hideous grin appeared on Zhu Fei's face. Defeating Qin Yu would greatly improve his reputation among the younger generation of the martial progenitors of the southern region. He might even gain the favor of the three princes. Whoosh! Rumble! A deep slapping sound and a loud collision could be heard. Zhu Fei, who was hit by Qin Yu's sealing light, felt like he had been hit by a giant beast. His figure was sent flying a few hundred zhang away as he spat out mouthfuls of blood. However, the secret skill executed by Zhu Fei's three avatars failed to inflict any damage to Qin Yu. Is that? Zhu Fei could not believe his eyes. He took a closer look and discovered that Qin Yu's figure was encapsulated by an ancient seal. His avatars had blocked all of the attacks. Immortal God Seal. Among the crowd of spectators, a martial emperor shouted. He had recognized the three emperors' divine ability that Qin Yu had used. He is indeed a core member of the imperial palace. Zhou Wuyuan's eyes flickered. Qin Yu's immortal stone emperor seal reminded him of Sun Xiu, who had defeated him in the spiritual state battle ranking. Back then, if it weren't for Sun Xiu's indestructible stone emperor seal, whose defensive power was too shocking, he wouldn't have been defeated by Sun Xiu. Chapter 338. Crown Prince, should we stop them? After Du Meixian, Zhu Fei was also defeated. As one could imagine, the younger generation of the martial ancestor realm in the southern region felt even more aggrieved. Everyone wanted to rush up and fight with Qin Yu. No one cared about the upcoming battle at the martial gathering. The martial emperor in charge of the martial gathering couldn't help but ask Yi Tianyu. We've already been stepped on. We can't just swallow it. Yi Tianyu said indifferently and didn't stop the martial gathering geniuses who were a little agitated. Even though Qin Yu was a core figure of the imperial palace, it was too arrogant for him to come to the southern region and act presumptuously. Even though he wouldn't lower himself to attack Qin Yu, he wouldn't stop the younger generation of the southern region either. This guy is deliberately provoking public anger. Sun Xiu looked at Qin Yu indifferently with a thoughtful look in her eyes. From the first time she saw Qin Yu until now, she couldn't see through Qin Yu. She really couldn't figure out what Qin Yu's purpose was to provoke the people of the southern region. However, Qin Yu didn't look like the kind of person who would do useless things. At this moment, Qin Yu's mind was carefully sensing his own fate with the heaven's fortune-stealing technique. Just as he had expected, after defeating Zhu Fei, he obtained another strand of providence. However, compared to Du Meixian, Zhu Fei's fate power was too thin, not even 1%. Qin Yu thought for a moment and understood. Identity and status determine the strength of one's fate power. After all, those who were born nobler than others were born with strong fate power. If that was the case, Qin Yu's eyes secretly look at Yi Tianyu and the other two. Without a doubt, the fate power of the martial emperor realm geniuses on the spiritual state battle ranking was far greater than that of the martial ancestor realm geniuses gathered at the divine dynasty martial gathering. Qin Yu was also looking forward to the upcoming spiritual state battle ranking. He wasn't interested in being famous in the spiritual state. However, if he could seize the fate power of the top geniuses of the spiritual state, his fate power would undergo a huge transformation. I'll fight you. While the young warriors of the southern region were in an uproar, a somewhat immature but very powerful voice rang out, suppressing the clamor. Everyone looked over and saw a young man in a golden robe flying towards the battle arena. He is Qian Shenfeng, the little prince of the immeasurable divine dynasty, the younger brother of the crown, Prince Qian Yuming. Rumor has it that Qian Shenfeng has a water spirit divine body. If this body evolves to the extreme, it will be comparable to an emperor body in the future. This is a true genius. Seeing the golden-robed youth appear, a wave of heated discussion broke out among the surrounding martial practitioners. Qian Shenfeng, Qian Yuming's younger brother, was currently 14 years old. However, his cultivation had reached the peak of the martial progenitor realm. Even among the hundreds of martial progenitor realm geniuses, Qian Shinfeng's strength was considered top-notch. Prince, Qin Yu displayed a smile on his face. Perhaps it was because he had plundered 2 strands of providence. Qin Yu could vaguely sense Qian Shinfeng's providence. Qian Shinfeng's providence was stronger than Du Meishuan's. No wonder he was born in the imperial family of the immeasurable divine dynasty. Don't say that the martial progenitors of the southern region will take turns fighting you. If you can defeat me, none of the martial progenitors of the immeasurable divine dynasty will challenge you again. Although Qian Shinfeng was young, his aura was extremely powerful. Among the martial progenitors who had entered the finals, there were only a handful who could compete with him. Among the martial progenitors of the immeasurable divine dynasty, he was indeed the strongest. If he lost, no one else would be a match for Qin Yu. Kid, you're so young, but you're so arrogant. Qin Yu looked at Qian Shinfeng with a smile. You're courting death. Qian Shinfeng was enraged. Although he was only 14 years old, none of the martial progenitors present could be said to be stronger than him. However, Qin Yu called him a kid, which was an insult to him. Whoosh! Qian Shinfeng immediately attacked. The laws of the heavens and earth responded in the void, and the faint sound of a tide could be heard. The tide grew stronger and stronger until it was like a huge wave. The crowd raised their heads and saw the power of the laws behind Qian Shinfeng turning into a huge wave. What a terrifying law of water! Sui Weqing wore a stern look. She had also comprehended the law of water, so she could sense it. The huge wave that Qian Shinfeng had unleashed was extremely powerful. Although she was also a martial progenitor who had completed the 9 nirvana cycles. Compared to Qian Shinfeng, the two of them were not on the same level. Not to mention her, even Du Meixian and Zhu Fei, who had been defeated by Qin Yu before. They would not be able to withstand a single attack from Qian Shinfeng. Towering wave. Qian Shinfeng shouted coldly as he pointed at Qin Yu from afar. With boundless might, the 10,000-foot-tall, enormous wave swept toward Qin Yu. An ordinary martial progenitor would have lost his will to fight in front of such a terrifying aura. However, Qin Yu's expression remained the same. Qian Shinfeng's strength was indeed top-notch among the martial progenitors. He was even more powerful than Shi Lingxiao, Sun Duanqing, and the others from the Heavenly Imperial Palace. However, it was a pity that Qian Shinfeng's opponent was Su Mo Seal. Qin Yu moved his right hand. Divine light flickered and condensed into a sparkling and translucent divine pearl that was entirely blue in color and covered with ocean blue water patterns. The huge wave immediately parted when it came into contact with the sacred orb, and it could not get close to Qin Yu. Forbidden water orb? Many people exclaimed. The sacred orb that Qin Yu had summoned was the Forbidden Water Orb, an ancient sacred artifact, which was known as the Law of Water. Many martial progenitors of the immeasurable god dynasty withdrew their excitement. With the Forbidden Water Orb, Qian Shinfeng would only be able to unleash 70 to 80% of his strength. At Qian Shinfeng's level, if his strength was reduced by 20 to 30%, there would be a huge gap in his strength. If Qin Yu was still hiding his strength, Qian Shinfeng might be defeated by Qin Yu. If that was the case, all the martial progenitors of the immeasurable god dynasty would be defeated by Qin Yu. Is this the divine ability of the Heavenly Imperial Palace? It is indeed powerful. However, don't think that you can defeat me just because you have summoned an ancient sacred artifact. Qian Shinfeng was also shocked, but he quickly calmed down and a cold smile appeared on his face. He formed a series of seals with his hands, and blue ancient patterns appeared on his fingers. Then, the sound of waves could be heard from his body. Immediately, the towering waves gathered around him once again. Moreover, this time, the giant waves surged forward in waves. Each wave was stronger than the previous one, and each wave was stronger than the previous one. Qian Feng actually succeeded in cultivating the 100 waves technique. Qin Yuming's eyes flashed with joy when he saw this. The 100 waves technique was obtained by the immeasurable god dynasty from an ancient ruin. Rumor had it that it was a sacred artifact left behind by a law of water. When a sacred artifact was cultivated to the extreme, the power of several laws could be increased by 100 times. Although Qian Chunfeng seemed to have just mastered it. With the innate water divine body, he could increase the power by more than 10 times. In this way, Qin Yu's forbidden water orb would not have any effect on Qian Chunfeng. Chapter 339. Go! Qian Chunfeng attacked again, and the 100-layered waves behind him swept toward Qin Yu. The power was more than 10 times stronger than before. That frightening divine might caused even a martial arena that was 1,000 miles wide to violently tremble. Even the forbidden water pearl was submerged by the waves. Of course, if it was the real forbidden water pearl, it would not have a problem stopping the 100-layered waves. However, the forbidden water pearl was just something that Qin Yu had created. Even if it had the forbidden water pearl, its power could not be compared to the real forbidden water pearl. Condense. Qin Yu was not flustered at all. He drew in the air with his right hand, and a sea blue bottle appeared in the air. The bottle was translucent, and one could clearly see that there was a vast sea in it. The sea was calm at times, and sometimes it was turbulent. It was like a world of its own. After the sea blue bottle was condensed, it floated in the air and became dozens of feet large, floating above Qin Yu's head. Water deity bottle. When Qian Chunfeng saw the enlarged sea blue bottle, his face changed completely. The sea blue bottle was emitting a mysterious, immortal light. The 100-layered waves were enveloped by the mysterious, immortal light and were sucked into the sea blue bottle. The water deity bottle was an ancient, immortal treasure that could restrain all water Dao superpowers. Even the 100 waves technique was restrained. Qian Yiming's eyes narrowed. This time, Qian Chunfeng was completely restrained. He could no longer use his law of water Dao superpowers. Damn it, I don't believe that you can do anything to me. Qian Chunfeng naturally knew his situation. His eyes flashed with determination. He moved his right hand, and a faint black spiritual bracelet appeared. Whoosh! As he poured his true yuan into the bracelet, a black shadow with an evil aura appeared and rushed toward Qin Yu. It's the phantom bracelet! Many martial artists of the immeasurable divine court exclaimed. The phantom bracelet was a divine weapon refined by the third divine court lord of the immeasurable divine court. It contained an ancient evil spirit. The evil spirit was a phantom body and had the power of the void. It was rumored that it was immune to all attacks. Who would have thought that the immeasurable divine dynasty's royal family would bestow this divine weapon upon Qian Chunfeng? This was enough to show that Qian Chunfeng's position in the Tianling royal family was not lower than Qian Yiming's. Sure enough, after the evil spirit appeared, it passed through the 100 layers of waves and the water god bottle. Breaking through the void, he pounced directly at Qin Yu. No matter how the laws of heaven and earth attacked, they were unable to hit the evil spirit. In a flash, the evil spirit entered Qin Yu's body. Qin Yu, who had been dodging at top speed, froze in place. After the water god bottle flashed with light, it suddenly exploded and turned into a mist that filled the sky. Success! A smile finally appeared on Qian Chunfeng's face. Evil spirits had the power of nothingness. They could ignore true essence attacks and suppress souls. Right now, Qin Yu's soul was being suppressed by that evil spirit. Not good. Qian Chunfeng's figure flashed as he approached Qin Yu at an extremely fast speed. He wanted to defeat Qin Yu. Qian Yiming, who was sitting in front of the judge's table, couldn't help but have a slight change in expression. Bang! Sure enough, when Qian Chunfeng rushed out, a human figure appeared from the mist like a ghost and struck out with his palm. As the divine light gathered, the protective shield around Qian Chunfeng's body exploded, and he was sent flying dozens of feet away. Qian Chunfeng, who was in shock and disbelief, had just stabilized his body. A divine spear tore through the void and pierced through the air, heading straight for his forehead. How did you do that? Looking at the divine spear, which was shining with a cold light, Qian Chunfeng's true essence stagnated. The power of law that had been rioting gradually dissipated. He had lost. If it had been a real battle of life and death, Qin Yu would have killed him with one strike. However, until his defeat, Qin Shinfeng still could not understand why the evil spirit, who had always been successful, would fail. Qin Shinfeng did not need to look to know that the evil spirit had only suppressed a clone. The one in front of him was Qin Yu's real body. However, the evil spirit had its own intelligence and should have realized that the clone did not have a soul. Why did it stay in a clone? Sorry, I happen to be proficient in the soul path technique. Qin Yu displayed a smile on his face. Qin Shinfeng's power of providence was almost twice as strong as Du Meishuan's. Faintly, Qin Yu felt that something seemed to be gradually brewing and condensing in his soul. Swoosh! As Qin Yu finished speaking, the clone disappeared and the evil spirit returned to Qin Shinfeng's body. You suppressed the evil spirit? When the evil spirit returned to the phantom bracelet, Qin Shinfeng was shocked. The evil spirit had the power of nothingness and was immune to many attacks. However, when the evil spirit was suppressed, the evil spirit's body would still materialize. Qin Yu had actually managed to seize that opportunity to suppress the evil spirit. It's not just the power of laws. Even the evil spirit was suppressed. Qin Yuming's eyes lit up. To be honest, Qin Shinfeng's defeat was completely beyond his expectations. Qin Yu's strength was so powerful that it had greatly surpassed his original estimation. Such a monstrous genius has appeared in the Emperor Tian Palace. Yi Tianyu and Zhou Yuan were also deep in thought, although Qin Yu is only a martial progenitor at the moment. Judging from the strength he had displayed, when he reached the martial monarch realm, he would most likely be like Sun Shiyu. He would be able to defeat opponents of a higher level. However, they were unsure of Qin Yu's talent and strength. Even Qin Shinfeng was defeated. Sui Weqing, Du Meixian, and the others were dumbfounded. At this moment, they finally realized that they were not on the same level as Qin Yu. The only one who was relatively calm was Sun Shiyu. In the trial of the Godly Emperor Tower, Qin Yu had defeated hundreds of people by himself. It was impossible to find a martial progenitor in the southern region who could defeat Qin Yu in a one-on-one battle. Following Qin Chunfeng's defeat, the tens of millions of onlookers fell into a dead silence. Even the martial monarchs were astonished. Qin Yu's strength had exceeded everyone's expectations. In the battle earlier, Qin Yu could be said to have easily suppressed Qin Shinfeng. The result of the battle caused the excited younger generation of the martial progenitor realm to fall silent. They had witnessed Qin Shinfeng's strength with their own eyes. When Qin Shinfeng went all out, not many people would be able to withstand his attacks. However, Qin Yu was still able to easily obtain victory in that state. It was easy to imagine how powerful he was. Is this guy really only a rank 1 Nirvana martial progenitor? With such strength, even an expert who has just reached the martial monarch realm would not be able to match him, right? Could it be that with so many martial progenitors in the southern region, no one is able to defeat him? Now it seems that only the 7th prince of the Heavenly Spirit Divine Court and the 9th princess of the Saint Divine Court can suppress him. After a brief silence, a series of heated discussions took place one after another. The younger generation of geniuses glanced at the 7th prince of the Heavenly Spirit Court and the 9th princess of the Saint Divine Court. If even Qin Shinfeng was defeated, the other young geniuses would only be humiliating themselves. The only ones who could defeat Qin Yu were the geniuses of the 2 divine dynasties who were as famous as Qin Shinfeng. Chapter 340. I'm no match for him. Zhou Yusin, the 9th princess of the Saint Divine Dynasty, shook her head as everyone looked at her. This surprised many people. As a princess of the Saint Divine Dynasty, how could she admit defeat? However, Zhou Yuanwu smiled and was not surprised. As Zhou Yusin's elder brother, he knew how powerful she was. Even if she used her trump card, she would not be able to defeat Qin Yu. In that case, there was no need for her to go on stage. Since the 9th princess has given in, I'll go on stage. Someone chuckled, and the eyes of the young geniuses of the three Saint Divine dynasties lit up. They all looked at Yi Xiaoning, the seventh prince of the Heavenly Spirit Divine Dynasty. Yi Xiaoning carried an ancient sword on his back as he stepped into the air and walked onto the battle stage. Although they were both princes of the Saint Divine Dynasty, Yi Xiaoning was much more reserved compared to Qian Shenfeng. Yi Xiaoning appeared to be much more reserved, giving people the feeling of a cool breeze. However, those who were truly discerning would be able to tell at a glance. Yi Xiaoning was definitely stronger than Qian Shenfeng. Yi Xiaoning's reserved manner was like steel that had been tempered thousands of times and was indestructible. "Brother Yi, what do you think of this battle?" Zhou Weiyuan turned his head and looked at Yi Tianyu. Qian Yuming also looked at him. Although they had heard of Yi Xiaoning, they did not know how powerful he was. "Xiaoning can fight with a martial emperor," Yi Tianyu said. "Oh." Zhou Weiyuan was surprised. It was rare for a martial ancestor to fight with a martial emperor. This Yi Xiaoning actually had such strength? That means the outcome has been decided. Qian Yuming's eyes lit up. Although Qian Shenfeng had been defeated by Qin Yu had been defeated by the three Saint Divine dynasties of the southern region. This had allowed the three Saint Divine dynasties to vent their frustrations. Otherwise, the martial ancestors of the three Saint Divine dynasties would be defeated by a martial ancestor from the Imperial Palace. That would be too much of a loss of face. It's hard to say. Yi Tianyu slowly shakes his head, his deep eyes falling on Qin Yu. If Qin Yu were to fight Qian Shenfeng with his full strength, there would be no doubt as to the outcome. However, judging from Qin Yu's previous battles, he didn't seem to be straining at all. Heavenly Spirit God Court, 7th Prince, Yi Xiaoning. Stopping several zhang away from Qin Yu, Yi Xiaoning clasps his fist and says to Qin Yu with a faint smile on his handsome face, "Heavenly Imperial Palace, Shun Feng." Qin Yu's face was also full of smiles. Yi Xiaoning's luck was no weaker than that of Qian Shenfeng, who Xiao Chun had defeated earlier. This was another big fat fish. What is Brother Shun's status in the Heavenly Imperial Palace? Yi Xiaoning was not in a hurry to make a move. Instead, he asked with a smile. Countless onlookers were also curious about Qin Yu's identity in the Sky Emperor Palace. Core disciple, Qin Yu did not hide anything. His current appearance was Shun Feng's. With the resources of the three divine dynasties, they only needed to do a little research to know that he was a core disciple of the Heavenly Imperial Palace. "Oh, I remember the rules of the Heavenly Imperial Palace. Only those who have reached the martial emperor realm can become a core disciple." Surprise flashed in Yi Xiaoning's eyes. Yi Tianyu and the other two were also shocked. A martial ancestor could become a core disciple. Could it be that Qin Yu's combat strength was comparable to a martial emperor? If that was the case, it was no surprise that Qian Shenfeng and the others had been defeated by Qin Yu. "Aren't rules meant to be broken?" Qin Yu said with a faint smile. Brother Shun's words make sense. Since ancient times, all the geniuses have never been restrained by the rules of the world. "Please." Yi Xiaoning laughed loudly. A cold light flashed, and the ancient sword on his back was unsheathed. His originally reserved and gentle temperament suddenly underwent an earth-shattering change, and his sharpness was oppressive. He was like a peerless, ferocious sword that wanted to slaughter the world. Sky Splitter Spear. Divine light flashed in Qin Yu's palm, and the Sky Splitter Spear appeared. His aura also changed drastically. Slash! Yi Xiaoning did not waste any time. He took a step forward, and countless mysterious sword runes lit up on his ancient sword. An unparalleled, dazzling sword radiance burst out. However, the moment the sword radiance was released, it immediately hid in the void and disappeared. Clang! Qin Yu turned his body and stabbed with his spear. The divine spear was like a dragon and had a vast and mighty aura. Suddenly, there was a sharp and ear-piercing sound of metal clashing in the void, followed by a dazzling explosion. The sword radiance that Yi Xiaoning had used to hide in the void was broken. Qi! The fighting spirit in Yi Xiaoning's eyes surges. His body rushes at Qin Yu, leaving behind numerous afterimages. He waved his ancient sword, and rays of dazzling sword radiance kept disappearing in the void and reappearing without any warning. That's the divine empty sword, someone exclaimed as they recognized the ancient sword in Yi Xiaoning's hand. The divine Empyrean sword was the only emperor weapon with the spatial ability among the known emperor weapons. In other words, the sword radiance that disappeared was not because Yi Xiaoning had comprehended spatial laws. It was because the divine empty sword had its own ability. However, clang, 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 intense and deafening clashing sounds continuously resounded in the void. Every collision was accompanied by sparks flying in all directions. No matter how elusive the sword radiance that Yi Xiaoning slashed out was, Qin Yu was able to accurately hit it, and not a single sword radiance was missed. Clang! After another clash, Yi Xiaoning turned around and retreated. He stared at Qin Yu with surging battle intent. Spatial abilities were extremely rare. In the past, Yi Xiaoning had always relied on the divine empty sword and his comprehension of the sword Dao. Almost no one below the martial emperor realm could block his attacks. However, today, the divine empty sword ability was completely ineffective against Qin Yu. Yi Xiaoning did not know if Qin Yu could predict the future or if he had also comprehended spatial laws. However, it did not matter. To be able to meet an evenly matched opponent in the martial ancestor realm, Yi Xiaoning felt that this might be an opportunity for him. An opportunity to help him break through the martial emperor barrier. You are the first person in the martial ancestor realm who has made me release the seal. Yi Xiaoning's gaze was as sharp as a sword. Countless sword shadows floated in the depths of his eyes. In the next moment, Yi Xiaoning shouted. A wave of materialized, destructive sword power soared into the sky from his body. Immediately, the sky trembled and the wind and clouds were annihilated. The silhouette of an ancient sword appeared out of nowhere behind him. The sword shadow was 10 feet large, and it was uncertain whether it was real or not. It emitted a terrifying, destructive sword power. Looking at the ancient sword shadow behind Yi Xiaoning, Lin Fan felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of power is that? A strange look flashed across Qin Yu's eyes. Yi Xiaoning had comprehended the most powerful and terrifying destruction, sword Dao, among all the offensive laws. Moreover, there was a terrifying sword power hidden in Yi Xiaoning's body. The sword power was even stronger than Yi Xiaoning's own power. Without a doubt, it was not Yi Xiaoning's power. However, Yi Xiaoning seemed to be able to control that power. How terrifying! This fluctuation is no weaker than the martial emperor realm. Right? I did not expect the 7th prince of the heavenly spirit god dynasty to have hidden such strength. Haha, let's see how arrogant that guy can be now. The martial progenitors of the 3 divine dynasties could feel the terrifying pressure from Yi Xiaoning. Apart from being shocked, they were also extremely excited. Their strength was completely on par with martial emperors. They did not believe that Qin Yu would be able to withstand them. Looks like it's time to get serious. Qin Yu stood with the spear in his hand. He formed a seal with his left hand, and a vast divine seal descended. After using the undying Rock Emperor's seal, numerous cyan-colored dragon marks appeared within Qin Yu's body. Chapter 341. Qin Yu's aura rose rapidly. It was the azure dragon battling the heavens. If it was Yi Xiaoning's own strength, Qin Yu could easily suppress him with his cultivation and the power of the 3 emperors. However, Qin Yu was very concerned about the mysterious sword aura in Yi Xiaoning's body. That's right, he was very concerned about it. If the sword aura was fully unleashed, even a martial monarch would not be able to withstand it. Even Qin Yu was surprised by his words and judgment. As expected, he did not use his full strength in the previous battles. The eyes of Yi Tianyu and the other 2 flickered when they sensed the rising aura in Qin Yu's body. Qin Yu's cultivation had reached the limit of the nirvana realm in the martial progenitor realm. He could even vaguely compare with Yi Xiaoning, who was surrounded by a destructive sword aura. Haha, very good. You are indeed worthy of my full strength. Yi Xiaoning feels that Qin Yu's power has also soared. Instead of being startled, he is delighted and laughs wildly. Condense. Before his laughter faded, Yi Xiaoning raised the divine sky, sword in his hand. Destructive sword might moved along with it. Streaks of destructive sword chi spread out and shattered the void. Gradually, they formed a sword chi windstorm. Yi Xiaoning stood in the middle of the sword aura storm. The ancient sword shadow behind him, which was originally 30 meters in size, gradually merged with the divine empty sword in his right hand. The instant the two swords overlapped, a destructive sword aura burst out in all directions like a tidal wave. Wherever the sword aura passed, cracks appeared on the deity realm's battle arena that was surrounded by ancient runes. It was evident how powerful Yi Xiaoning's aura was. What kind of power is that? At that instant, even Qian Yuming, Zhou Weiyuan, Sun Shiyu, and the other geniuses of the spiritual state's battle ranking were shocked. The power that Yi Xiaoning emitted at this time actually made them all have a trace of palpitating danger. How could they not be shocked when a martial progenitor realm genius possessed such power? Zhou Yuanwu and Qian Yuming finally understood. Why did Yi Tianyu say that Yi Xiaoning had the power to fight against a martial monarch? He can already control the sword soul. Yi Tianyu's eyes flickered with astonishment when he sensed the destructive sword aura from Yi Xiaoning. Outsiders did not know what kind of destructive sword might Yi Xiaoning was emitting. However, as the crown prince of the heavenly spirit divine dynasty, Yi Tianyu knew very well. When Yi Xiaoning was born, a sword spirit accompanied him and fused into his body. As Yi Xiaoning grew up, the power of the sword soul became increasingly terrifying. The higher-ups of the heavenly spirit god court had no choice but to seal the sword soul. Unexpectedly, Yi Xiaoning was already able to control the power of the sword soul. Slash. Like a sudden clap of thunder, Yi Xiaoning suddenly charged out explosively with the ancient sword in hand. The ancient sword slashed out, and a 3-meter-long destructive sword light appeared in front of Qin Yu in the blink of an eye. Wherever the sword light passed, a long crack appeared in the void, emitting chaotic spatial fluctuations. Rumble. A deafening explosion immediately rang out. The indestructible stone emperor seal that was struck by the destructive sword light trembled violently. The destructive shockwaves that erupted from the two turned into destructive hurricanes that were thousands of feet wide, wreaking havoc in all directions. The arena, which was already filled with cracks, was now filled with cracks that were tens of meters long. It was as if the entire fighting ring could collapse at any time. He actually blocked my attack? Yi Xiaoning's eyes narrowed in disbelief. His move just now had fused with the power of the sword soul in his body. Even a real martial emperor would find it difficult to block it. However, Qin Yu had blocked it unscathed. The defensive power of the ancient seal was simply too shocking. Little did he know that Qin Yu was also quite surprised at this moment. Under Yi Xiaoning's sword, several clear cracks had appeared on the indestructible stone emperor seal. One should know that Qin Yu was now in the state of the azure dragon fighting the heavens. Even the indestructible stone emperor seal that he had used now was somewhat difficult to resist. Yi Xiaoning's current combat strength was no less than the martial emperor realm. No wonder you can break the rules of the Emperor Tian Palace. You are indeed strong. Yi Xiaoning held the ancient sword tightly with both hands and slashed wildly. His movements were bold and majestic. It was as if the sword in his hand was not an ancient sword, but a saber or an axe. The space was torn apart by the divine void sword, leaving pitch-black cracks. Qin Yu naturally would not just focus on defense. The Sky Splitter spear emitted a terrifying aura as it continuously stabbed forward. The sky was filled with spear glows like a meteor shower, countless and dazzling. The two of them fought fiercely in the air of the fighting ring. Each of their moves was meant to kill the other. The martial emperor who was acting as the judge had an unprecedentedly focused expression. The surrounding tens of millions of spectators were dead silent. They even subconsciously held their breaths. Even the martial emperors reacted the same way. They did not expect such an exciting battle to take place in a martial progenitor realm martial gathering. Yi Xiaoning and Qin Yu's combat strength could be said to be the limit of the martial ancestor realm. However, in terms of potential, Qin Yu is far superior to Yi Xiaoning. After all, Qin Yu's actual cultivation was only at the first cycle of the Nirvana realm. If he were to master the 9th cycle of the Nirvana realm, he would be able to break through the gap and possess a law-defying battle strength. Although Yi Xiaoning was able to fight against a martial Emperor Realm cultivator, it was still impossible for him to defeat a martial Emperor Realm cultivator. However, Qin Yu's future potential was different. Of course, that was in the future. It was hard to tell who would win the battle now. Bang! After another fierce clash, the two were knocked a few hundred jong away by the rebound force. They faced each other across the chaotic rift. How satisfying. It's been a long time since I had such an enjoyable battle. Yi Xiaoning glanced at Qin Yu, whose face was not flushed at all, with a burning battle intent in his eyes. Qin Yu was indeed the first martial ancestor realm cultivator that he could not defeat despite using his full strength. I see. Qin Yu calmly glanced at Yi Xiaoning. After the fierce battle just now, Lin Fan's expression changed drastically. Qin Yu finally figured out what the terrifying sword intent in Yi Xiaoning's body was. A reincarnator. Yi Xiaoning was also a rare reincarnator. The sword intent in his body was the sword spirit that he had cultivated in his past life. Apart from his siblings of the Jiang tribe, this Yi Xiaoning was the 3rd reincarnator that Qin Yu had encountered. However, judging from Yi Xiaoning's reaction, it was obvious that he had yet to awaken the memories of his past life. Therefore, he was not considered a real reincarnator. The game ends here, seeing Yi Xiaoning gathering his sword intent and preparing to attack once again. A blue dragon rune appeared on Qin Yu's right palm. The dragon rune glowed brightly as the sky-shattering spear was covered in a faint yin-yang curse. This guy, Yi Xiaoning, who was about to attack, halted his movement. He was able to sense an extremely frightening sense of danger from Qin Yu. If he were to attack Qin Yu now, he would surely suffer a destructive attack. Yin-yang world-destroying spear. Qin Yu made his move. All of a sudden, he turned into a ray of light and dashed forward at an incredible speed. Chapter 342. Reverse Moon Slash. Yi Xiaoning's eyes narrowed. Without thinking, he gripped the sword hilt with both hands and unleashed his strongest attack. The sword radiance wreaked havoc in the air and turned into a crescent moon. Crack! When the crescent moon sword radiance and the yin-yang spear collided, they shattered like glass and turned into countless sword radiances that scattered in the air. Boom! At the critical moment, Yi Xiaoning only had time to use the Divine Void sword to block in front of him, dodging the killing move that was thrusting towards him. However, he was sent flying a few hundred feet away by the huge force. The blood in his body was boiling, and he suffered serious internal injuries. This battle is over. After tumbling in the air for over 10 rounds, Yi Xiaoning finally stabilized his body and was about to continue the battle. However, he felt a cold aura locking onto him, causing his body to turn cold, and he did not dare to move. The martial emperor who was acting as the judge quickly spoke and ended the battle. Yi Xiaoning slowly turned his head and saw that Qin Yu had appeared behind him. When a martial emperor announced the end of the battle, the terrifying killing intent on the Sky Splitter spear gradually dissipated. I have lost this time. However, I will not lose to you again next time. Yi Xiaoning sheathed the ancient sword, and the destructive sword aura in his body disappeared without a trace. Although he had lost to Qin Yu, he had benefited greatly from the battle with Qin Yu. There was a great terror between life and death. When Yi Xiaoning fought with Qin Yu, it could be said that it was a battle of life and death. He had unleashed his potential to the extreme. This also allowed Yi Xiaoning to have a deeper understanding of the martial emperor realm. Perhaps. Qin Yu smiled noncommittally. Even if Yi Xiaoning had broken through to the martial emperor realm, Qin Yu was not afraid. In the previous battle, he had only unleashed 50 to 60% of his strength. If he had gone all out, Yi Xiaoning might not even be able to take 10 moves from him. However, Qin Yu was curious about Yi Xiaoning's reincarnation status. In the history of the Sky region, anyone who could reincarnate was definitely a top expert when they were alive. As Yi Xiaoning was defeated, a majestic force of providence appeared. It appeared from Yi Xiaoning's body and was devoured by Qin Yu. Qin Yu came back to his senses, and his eyes flashed with joy. Yi Xiaoning was indeed a reincarnator. The force of fortune in his body was more than 10 times stronger than Qian Shenfeng and Du Meishuan's. The martial assembly of the divine dynasty, where tens of millions of people had gathered, was dead silent. First, it was Qian Shenfeng. Now, even Yi Xiaoning, who was comparable to a martial emperor, had been defeated. Who among the martial progenitors of the southern region could stand a chance against Qin Yu? Come down. Amidst the dead silence, Sun Shiyu's flat voice sounded. Originally, Sun Shiyu only wanted Qin Yu to teach Du Meishin a lesson for speaking rudely. However, in the end, Qin Yu had utterly defeated the martial progenitor realm of the southern domain. Looking at it now, it would be difficult for the martial gathering to continue. It was time to leave. Qin Yu nodded slightly and prepared to leave the battle arena. During the battle against Qian Shenfeng, apart from Yi Xiaoning, a few other martial progenitors were eager to battle Qin Yu. However, after the battle between him and Yi Xiaoning ended, the few sky prides who still had the will to fight fell silent at this moment. Evidently, they no longer thought that they were a match for Qin Yu. There was no need for Qin Yu to stay here any longer. As for the plundering of luck, since he had figured it out, there would be plenty of opportunities in the future. The luck of the younger generation of martial progenitors was definitely not as good as Yi Tianyu, Zhou Huiyin, Qin Yuming, and the other geniuses on the combat ranking. Stop right there. However, at this moment, a cold voice sounded. As soon as the voice sounded, a figure leaped onto the battle arena. It was a rank 5 martial emperor. What's the matter? Qin Yu's footsteps slightly stopped. He looked at that rank 5 martial emperor indifferently. Brat, your true cultivation has already reached the martial emperor realm, right? The rank 5 martial emperor said coldly. The martial emperor who was acting as the judge looked at Yi Tianyu and the other 2 crown princes. When he saw that the 3 crown princes had no intention of stopping Yi Tianyu, his eyes flickered and he came to a realization. It would appear that the 3 crown princes wanted to test out Qin Yu's strength. I believe that even if you can't tell whether or not I've concealed my cultivation, the many martial emperors present should be able to tell. Qin Yu said indifferently. Humph. Although I don't know what sort of secret technique you've used to conceal your cultivation, the Nirvana tribulation is a martial emperor. However, I have never heard of a Nirvana first cycle martial ancestor possessing a battle power comparable to a martial emperor. The rank 5 martial emperor coldly snorted. When the several tens of millions of spectators heard the rank 5 martial emperor's words, they all started to discuss spiritedly. Indeed, Qin Yu's ability to fight opponents of a higher cultivation level was too powerful. This caused the crowd to suspect whether or not Qin Yu had concealed his true cultivation. If you've never heard of it, I can only say that you're ignorant and inexperienced. Qin Yu lightly smiled. Is that so? In that case, I would like to see it for myself today. The rank 5 martial emperor sneered, and his aura became even more oppressive. I'd advise you not to attack. You'll be injured. As if he did not sense the martial emperor's oppressive might, Qin Yu said indifferently. Boom! The rank 5 martial emperor smiled disdainfully and shot forth a palm strike. Space trembled, and the vast heaven and earth's great Tao exploded. At this moment, the space within a circumference of 1,000 miles became oppressive. The battle between Qin Yu and Yi Xiaoning was on a completely different level compared to the martial emperor's great Tao's oppressive might. Bang! However, in the next instant, the rank 5 martial emperor's great Tao shattered. As if he had been struck by a giant beast, his body was sent flying while vomiting blood. This aura, the expressions of Yi Tianyu, Zhou Wuyuan, and Qian Yuming changed. They all looked at the person who had appeared before Qinyu. The person who had attacked was naturally Sun Shiyu. The three great divine dynasties are famous throughout the southern region. Never would I have imagined that there would be such a scoundrel among them. Sun Shiyu took off her veil, and her ordinary face immediately became radiant. She's Sun Shiyu. Sun Shiyu, one of the four great saints of the spiritual state. She's here too. It's really her. The Heavenly Imperial Palace actually sent Sun Shiyu to the Divine Dynasty Martial Gathering. What are they trying to do? Seeing Sun Shiyu's true appearance, countless onlookers exclaimed. Sun Shiyu was a genius at the same level as Yi Tianyu and the other two. She had even defeated Zhou Wuyuan in the last spiritual state battle ranking. She was extremely talented. She's Sun Shiyu. Sui Weqing and the others were even more shocked than when they saw Qin Yu defeat Yi Xiaoyu. In the last spiritual state battle ranking, Sun Shiyu was one of the few female geniuses who had entered the top 50. Sui Weqing had always regarded Sun Shiyu as her goal. Du Meixian, who had mocked Sun Shiyu before, was completely petrified. In front of Sun Shiyu, her talent was not even worthy of carrying her shoes. No wonder Sun Shiyu and Qian Yuming ignored her mockery. She was probably just a clown in the eyes of Sun Shiyu and Qin Yu. I didn't expect Miss Shiyu to condescend to watch the martial gathering of the southern region. Sorry for the neglect. Yi Tianyu, Zhou Yuan, and Qian Yuming flew into the air and appeared on the battle stage. Only geniuses of the same level could make the three of them pay so much attention. Chapter 343. However, Miss Shiyu, why did you cause such a ruckus in the martial gathering? Qin Yu had caused such a ruckus in the martial gathering of the Divine Dynasty. The three Divine Dynasties had lost all their face, and Yi Tianyu had the right to question Shen Tian. The three crown princes should know the whole story. If it weren't for that princess, who kept speaking rudely and tarnishing the reputation of the Imperial Palace of Heaven, we wouldn't have done anything. As for what happened, it was indeed Xin Feng's fault, and I apologize to the three crown princes on his behalf. However, the three crown princes sent martial emperors to fight. Isn't that a loss of the three divine dynasties' reputation? Sun Shiyu was eloquent. Although she was in the territory of the three divine dynasties, she was neither servile nor overbearing. Miss Shiyu, what you said is true. It's my fault for not being strict enough. How about this? I'll have someone prepare a banquet to apologize to Miss Shiyu and this brother. Yi Tianyu naturally knew the whole story, and he didn't really want to argue with Sun Shiyu. He laughed and skipped over the grudge of the martial gathering. I appreciate Crown Prince Ye's kindness, but my palace's elders have come to pick me up. I'll take my leave now. See you at the spiritual state battle ranking. Sun Shiyu didn't wait for the three to speak, and she left the battle stage with Qin Yu, the limit of her rank 6 martial emperor. Sure enough, Sun Shiyu's cultivation has improved by leaps and bounds in the past 3 years. It seems that this year's spiritual state battle ranking is much more exciting than the previous one. Yi Tianyu and the other 2 crown princes didn't stop Sun Shiyu, but looked at her with flickering eyes. When they saw Sun Shiyu appear, they knew that Sun Shiyu didn't come to watch the martial gathering. Probing their cultivations was the real deal. However, they also knew Sun Shiyu's cultivation, and they were more confident. Then, the 3 of them returned to the judge's table as if nothing had happened. However, after Sun Shiyu left with Qin Yu, the high-level martial emperors of the 3 divine dynasties disappeared quietly. Whoosh! A pair of white wings appeared on Sun Shiyu's back. With a flap of the wings, she moved hundreds of miles away. Someone's catching up. Are they from the 3 divine dynasties? Qin Yu, who was being carried by Sun Shiyu, said with a slightly changed expression, "You've messed up the martial gathering of the divine dynasties and humiliated the 3 divine dynasties. Although they won't bother with us on the surface, who knows what they will do in the dark? Of course, even if they did not cause a ruckus at the martial gathering, the three divine dynasties were still fighting openly and secretly. Since they've discovered me, they'll definitely take action to slander the other party. Sun Xiu didn't seem surprised at all, but she flapped her wings even faster. At that moment, there were a few rank 8 and 9 martial emperors behind them, breaking through the void at lightning speed. Although they had discovered each other, they turned a blind eye to it. His targets were only Sun Xiu and Qin Yu. One of them was one of the 4 heavenly talents of the spiritual state, while the other was a Nirvana First Revolution martial ancestor. Their aptitude was too terrifying, and when they grew up, they would definitely become extremely powerful existences in the Emperor realm. Although the 3 god dynasties and the Sky Emperor Palace did not have much of a grudge against each other, the Sky Emperor Palace did not have much of a grudge against them. But since there was a chance to get rid of Sun Xiu and Qin Yu, they naturally wouldn't let it go. They're finally here. Not long after, Sun Xiu, who was flying at lightning speed, had her eyes lit up and her expression relaxed. The original speed of the extreme escape had slowed down. Qin Yu raised his head and looked over. He saw that in the distant sky, a world-shaking oppressive might had appeared. Without a doubt, it was definitely an Emperor Realm figure. It seemed that Sun Xiu wasn't lying when she said that someone from the Heavenly Imperial Palace would come to pick her up. At that moment, the several martial emperors who had been chasing them sensed the unbridled pressure of an Emperor Realm Master. Sensing an Emperor Realm Master, they didn't hesitate and disappeared without a trace in an instant. Xiao. Not long after, a figure fell from the sky like a meteor. One moment he was far away in the sky, and the next moment he was in front of Sun Xiu and Qin Yu. It was a man in purple, holding an ancient flute. Fourth uncle. Sun Xiu smiled sweetly when she saw the person. You came to the Southern Territory with Chun Feng without a single elder. You're getting bolder and bolder. Sun Yunlang scolded as soon as he saw her. Fourth uncle, I have the cloud-concealing veil that you refined. Who in the Heaven Territory can see through my disguise? Sun Xiu quickly said with a smile when she saw this. Her fourth uncle was not only an Emperor Realm Master, but also an Emperor-grade artifact refiner. He was famous in the 9 provinces of the Heaven Territory. Little girl, it's useless to bribe me this time. Your father and your second uncle are both furious. You're going to suffer when you go back this time. Sun Yunlang laughed gloatingly when he heard this. No way. Even father and second uncle know about such a small matter? Fourth uncle, you didn't tell on them, did you? Sun Xiu pouted. Haha, with your father's ability, do you think he needs me to tell on them? Sun Yunlang grinned. Oh no. Sun Xiu's face turned bitter. Her father was the high priest of the Heavenly Imperial Palace, and he practiced divination. Divination was far from being able to predict the future and look back to the past. However, it wasn't difficult for him to divine her fate and whereabouts. Let's go back. Sun Yunling laughed even more when he saw Sun Xiu's bitter face. Sun Xiu had been talented since she was a child, but she had been spoiled since she was young. Qin Yu was related to the future of the Heavenly Imperial Palace, and she dared to bring him out alone. It was good to take this opportunity to teach her a lesson so that she would not act rashly. Although Qin Yu's identity was kept secret in the Heavenly Imperial Palace, it was hard to guarantee that no one would take risks because of speculation. This was something that the higher-ups of the Heavenly Imperial Palace had to avoid at the moment. Sun Xiu and Qin Yu returned to the Southern Territory Transmission Array 2 days later with the help of the Emperor Realm Sun Yunling. However, in these 2 days, Sun Xiu and Qin Yu made a big fuss at the Divine Dynasty Martial Gathering of the 3 great Divine Dynasties. The news had already spread throughout the entire southern region, and it had even spread to the other 3 regions. In countless versions of the rumor, Qin Yu's name, Chun Feng, became famous throughout the Southern Territory. Countless forces were trying to find out about Qin Yu. First, he easily crushed a Nirvana martial ancestor with his Nirvana first cycle cultivation. Then, he defeated the immeasurable Divine Dynasty's little prince, Qian Shinfeng, and made the 9th princess of the Sage Divine Dynasty admit defeat. Even the seventh prince, Yi Xiaoyu, who was comparable to a martial emperor, was defeated by him. In the southern territory, Qin Yu was called an invincible genius under the martial emperor realm by countless busybodies. Some people even put Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu, one of the four great sages of the spirit state, as the dragon and phoenix duo. Heavenly Imperial Palace. Although Qin Yu had heard about the rumors in the southern territory, he did not care at all. After returning, Qin Yu immediately went into seclusion. However, Qin Yu originally planned to cultivate hard and prepare for the Spirit State War ranking after returning, but he changed his mind. On the way back, Qin Yu asked Sun Shiyu about the Spirit State War ranking. He learned that only martial emperors could participate in the Spirit State War ranking. The Spirit State War ranking would start in less than 4 months, which directly extinguished Qin Yu's idea. Chapter 344. In less than 4 months. If he cultivated with the help of the Dragon Soul's space-time ability and supplemented it with various enlightenment pills, Qin Yu was confident that he could break through the Nirvana realm and forcefully break through to the martial emperor realm. However, if he did that, his foundation would be unstable. Qin Yu naturally wouldn't do such a thing. Anyway, he could plunder the power of providence at any time. There was no need to ruin his foundation for the spiritual state battle ranking. The loss outweighed the gain. During his seclusion, in addition to comprehending the Heaven's Fortune technique, Qin Yu was also using the power of the Heavenly Emperor Palace to find a way to break through the void space. From the looks of it, entering the void space was Qin Yu's top priority. If he could enter the void space and subdue the dragon race, then Qin Yu might be able to directly leap into the martial emperor realm before the spiritual state battle ranking. In that case, there would be 2 fish in a net. Unfortunately, the Dragon Soul's understanding of the space-time law was not deep enough. Otherwise, with the power of the space-time law, it would be possible to directly enter the void space. Therefore, the focus of Qin Yu's seclusion changed from cultivation to carefully comprehending the Heaven's Fortune technique. But Qin Yu didn't know that when he returned to the Heavenly Emperor Palace to cultivate, there was already a group of forces approaching the void space that he was thinking about. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In the forbidden area of the Fiend Demon Sea, the void shook slightly, and after the array pattern spread out, 7 figures stepped out of the void. The aura exuding from these 7 people was majestic and unfathomable. They were all Emperor Realm Masters. If Qin Yu was here, he would definitely recognize them. The clothes these people wore were exactly the same as the black-clothed old man in Pan Hong's battle. They were all dressed in black with a faint black ghost head mark on their bodies. They were all Emperor Realm Masters of the sacrificial evil god dynasty. Sending out 7 Emperor Realm Masters at once, even if it was the foundation of a god dynasty, was considered a big move. After all, even the divine dynasties had different trump cards. Some had obtained ancient inheritances, while others had risen in recent times. The sacrificial evil god dynasty was a force that had obtained ancient inheritances and was famous in the heaven domain. There are indeed traces of Qian Xie's battle here, but I can't sense Qian Xie's aura. Apart from Qian Xie's Dao power, the other Dao power has been erased. It seems that Qian Xie is doomed. What happened? Qian Xie is a powerful sovereign in the divine dynasty. Even if he can't beat him, he should be able to escape. I can only say that Qian Xie was either surrounded by a desperate situation, or he encountered a ruthless person who could kill a venerable sovereign alone. Who is it? How dare you attack the people of the divine dynasty? No matter what, we must find him and kill him. Search carefully. If something really happened to Qian Xie, he should have left behind some information. The 7 Emperor Realm Masters of sacrificial evil god dynasty discussed with each other before immediately spreading out to search the Fiend Demon Sea. 2 months passed in the blink of an eye. In the last 2 months, all the forces in the 4 regions of the spiritual state focused their attention on one thing. The spiritual state battle ranking would be held in 2 months. Boom! But on this day, in the southern territory of the spiritual state, a huge pillar of spiritual chi rushed into the sky. The southern territory was shaken, and in less than half a day, the news spread throughout the spiritual state. Buzz, buzz. In the heavenly imperial palace, Qin Yu, who was cultivating in seclusion, suddenly changed his expression. The dragon soul also appeared in the ancient dragon seal. The mark left in the fiend demon sea has fallen into another space. The dragon soul's eyes flashed. The mark that Qin Yu secretly left in the fiend demon sea was integrated with the dragon soul's space-time divine ability. It could merge with the void, making it undetectable. And there was another use. As long as the void space was opened, then the imprint would be guided by the power of space and enter the void dimension. But now, in other words, the void space has been opened. Qin Yu's eyes flashed with joy. This was really a big surprise. He was worried that he couldn't open the void space. He didn't expect that the void space would be opened. It should be. The dragon soul was also quite excited. Qin Yu's mind moved, and an ancient spiritual rune array appeared in the spiritual array disk. As the rune trembled, a white skeleton figure appeared in the teleportation array, at this time, in a certain confinement room in the heavenly imperial palace. Click! The confinement room was opened, and Sun Xiu, who was meditating in seclusion, opened her eyes strangely. Miss, the palace lord wants you to go to the sacred palace. The descendant of the war emperor who opened the door of the confinement room said respectfully. The palace lord wants me? What's the matter? Sun Xiu was a little puzzled. She had been in seclusion for 3 months, and it seemed that the time was not up yet. I don't know, but the high priest is also there. It seems that there is something important to discuss. The descendant of the war emperor said. Father is also there. Sun Xiu's expression turned serious. If there was nothing important, her father would not leave the celestial tower. Sun Xiu immediately went to the sacred palace of the heavenly imperial palace. When she entered the sacred palace, she found that there were 3 figures in the sacred palace. Palace Lord, Father, Second Uncle. Sun Xiu bowed. Apart from Shi Tiangang and Sun Jiuxiao, there was also a man in a starry robe with a white beard that reached his waist. The man in the starry robe was Sun Xiu's father, the high priest of the heavenly imperial palace, Sun Guxing. Xiu, did you and Shun Feng go to the southern forbidden land, the fiendish demon sea? Seeing Sun Xiu's arrival, Shi Tiangang did not beat around the bush and went straight to the point. Yes. Sun Xiu nodded, but she was a little surprised. Didn't she ask about this matter the last time? Then do you know why Shin Feng went to the fiendish demon sea? Sun Guxing asked. His voice was old, like an old man past his prime. However, the aura on his body was as vast as the sea, without any signs of weakening. I asked Shin Feng, but he did not say. Sun Xiu shook her head. Then a thought flashed across her mind, and she asked, It's the fiendish demon sea. Did something happen? Sun Xiu remembered the battle between Pan Hong and Qian Xie in the fiendish demon sea. The 2 sovereigns were fighting there, and Qin Yu was so concerned about the fiendish demon sea. Something must be wrong there. A void space appeared in the fiendish demon sea, and now the whole spiritual state knows about it. According to the divination, there should be an ancient heavenly qilin in there. Sun Guxing said, An ancient heavenly qilin. Sun Xiu's eyes lit up. The heavenly imperial palace had spent a lot of effort to find the 4 great divine herbs in the past few months. Now, a divine herb had finally appeared. Father, do you think that Shun Feng went to the fiendish demon sea because he already knew about the void space? But soon, the excited Sun Xiu came to her senses and understood why her father had asked about Qin Yu. Shun Feng is the only person in the history of the heavenly imperial palace who has obtained all the divine skills of the 3 sovereigns. He is also the only person who has entered the divine skill space of the 3 sovereigns so far. Therefore, he should not have gone to the fiendish demon sea for no reason. Maybe he learned something from the inheritance of the 3 sovereigns' divine skills. Sun Guxing nodded slowly. That was what they were concerned about. Until now, the only information about the 4 great divine herbs was the ancient heavenly Qilin. Chapter 345. Shun Feng should have a purpose for going to the fiendish demon sea, but I think that if he already knew the whereabouts of the ancient heavenly Qilin, he wouldn't have deliberately hidden it from us. After all, he is the descendant of the three emperors and has refined the immortal emperor pill. It will be helpful for him to awaken the divine emperor bloodline. Sun Shiyu felt that her father's words made sense, but she also felt that there was no need for Qin Yu to deliberately hide this matter. Ever since the descendants of the divine emperor went to the ancient imperial martial world, they have become estranged from our two factions. As a result, he became estranged from our two factions, and there was even a clear conflict between us. They should be feeling indignant for the ancestors of their lineage who died. Shen Feng may have been influenced by their elders and deliberately concealed information from us. You also know that the whereabouts of the four divine herbs are very important to our heavenly imperial palace. So, this time, you have to find out when you go to the void. Does Qin Yu know the exact whereabouts of the ancient heavenly Qilin in the void? Sun Jiuxiao said. If Qin Yu knew the exact whereabouts of the ancient heavenly Qilin, it was very likely that he was hiding something from them. But unfortunately, Sun Jiuxiao and the others were thinking too much. The reason why Qin Yu went to the fiendish demon sea was purely a coincidence. Father, do you mean to send Qin Yu to the void? Sun Shiyu didn't react. Didn't it mean that the appearance of the void was known by the entire spiritual state? At this time, countless major forces must have gone there. Father and the others were going to send her and Qin Yu? Were they not afraid that something would happen to Qin Yu? There's a terrifying Tao forbidding formation in the illusionary space. Not only can Emperor Realm cultivators not enter, but even martial emperors have a bone age limit. In other words, only the younger generation can enter the void. Sun Guxing said, if that is the case, I can go. Why would Shen Feng go? Sun Shiyu was even more surprised. Qin Yu's combat strength could be considered invincible in the martial ancestor realm. But in the martial emperor realm, it was not enough. Under such circumstances, even Sun Shiyu was not absolutely confident that she could protect Qin Yu. Moreover, wasn't her objective to vie for the ancient heavenly Qilin? If he brought along Qin Yu, who was a burden, wouldn't it be obvious that he was giving the heavenly Qilin away? A true ancient divine beast, in the entire 9 continents of the heaven domain, no force would not be tempted. I don't know where Shen Feng got the news from, but he already knows about the appearance of the void space. He personally came to find me. His attitude was very firm. No matter what, he had to go to the void space. We have no choice but to agree. Shirtian Gang said helplessly. No matter how they looked at it, they didn't want Qin Yu to take the risk. However, due to Qin Yu's special status, they couldn't treat Qin Yu the way they treated ordinary juniors. With their strength, they could forcibly control Qin Yu and prevent him from leaving. In that case, Qin Yu would definitely be estranged from them. It was already hard to stop the infighting between the descendants of generals. Shirtian Gang and the others did not want to cause their own people to be at odds with each other. All right, I will ask clearly this time whether Shen Feng knew about this long ago. Hearing this, Sun Shiyu understood. The Heavenly Imperial Palace could allow Qin Yu to take the risk, but there were some matters of principle that had to be clarified. Shiyu, go and inform Shen Feng. I will bring you to the southern region later. Shirtian Gang said to Sun Shiyu. Yes. Sun Shiyu nodded and turned to leave. The entire spiritual state knows about the appearance of the void space this time. The other 6 top forces and the 10 overlords will not let go of this opportunity. They will definitely send the elites of the younger generation. Therefore, other than Shiyu and Jing Tian, shouldn't we send them as well? Seeing that Sun Shiyu had left, Sun Jiuxiao looked at Shirtian Gang and Sun Guxing. After all, the ancient heavenly Qilin was of great importance. They had to obtain it at all costs. If they missed this opportunity, how could they find another ancient heavenly Qilin? Who knew how long they would have to wait? How are they doing now? Shi Tiangang asked after pondering for a moment. On the surface, Sun Shiyu and Shi Jingtian were the most outstanding martial ancestors of a younger generation in the Heavenly Imperial Palace. However, in reality, the Heavenly Imperial Palace had secretly nurtured many outstanding talents. For example, Sun Jiuxiao was definitely one of the top sovereigns in the Heavenly Imperial Palace. However, not many people in the outside world knew about Sun Jiuxiao. Sun Jiuxiao had been operating in the dark. He was responsible for many of the problems that the Heavenly Imperial Palace could not solve on the surface. Naturally, a group of nameless experts who were loyal to the Heavenly Imperial Palace had gathered under Sun Jiuxiao. To put it bluntly, they were like the men of sacrifice that many forces would have. They have just merged with the power of inheritance and are not in a stable state. However, their strength has reached the standard. If they join forces, they will not be inferior to Shiyu and Jingtian. The people that Sun Jiuxiao mentioned were the seeds that had just received the inheritance from the Heavenly Imperial Palace. Although their talents were not as good as Sun Shiyu and Shi Jingtian, their strength was not weak. At the current stage, there were no more suitable candidates than them. Then let them go with us. However, don't use the descendants of the 12 war generals. Shi Tiangang pondered for a while and made up his mind. If the older generation experts could not enter the void space, with one more martial emperor, they would have more combat power to obtain the ancient heavenly Qilin. I know what to do. Sun Jiuxiao nodded. With a flash of lightning, he disappeared. In the main hall of the Heavenly Imperial Palace, Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu were waiting for Shi Tiangong's arrival. Senior sister, if you look at me like that, others will misunderstand. Qin Yu turned his head helplessly and said to Sun Shiyu, who had been sizing him up ever since they came out, I haven't seen you for 2 months. Your cultivation has improved again. Sun Shiyu coughed softly, thinking about how to start the conversation. She had been in seclusion for 2 months, and her cultivation had improved. However, Qin Yu had broken through one level and reached the nirvana second transformation of the martial ancestor realm. Just say it. With Qin Yu's eyesight, he could tell that Sun Shiyu had been sizing him up. It was obvious that she had something to say. When you went to the southern region's fiendish demon sea, did you already know that there was a void space there? Sun Shiyu was straightforward when she heard this. She didn't conceal anything and went straight to the point. Yes, Qin Yu nodded. Since the void space had shown up, there was no need for him to deny it. You knew? Why didn't you tell me about such a serious matter? Sun Shiyu subconsciously raised her voice. It seemed like Qin Yu was indeed hiding something. What do you mean? Qin Yu was confused. The dragon tribe in the void space was indeed very important to him. However, it didn't seem to have anything to do with the Heavenly Imperial Palace, right? You didn't know that there was an ancient heavenly Qilin in the void space? Qin Yu's reaction startled Sun Shiyu. Chapter 346. How would I know? I don't know anything about divination. Qin Yu said curiously. Then why did you go to the void dimension last time? Sun Shiyu let out a sigh of relief. As a matter of fact, considering the talent Qin Yu had displayed, she did not want Qin Yu to be estranged from the empresses. Sun Shiyu had been surprised by Qin Yu's strength during the trial at the Godly Emperor Tower. However, just like the others of the Sky Emperor Palace, she assumed that Qin Yu had defeated the martial progenitors of the Sky Emperor Palace because he had used the power of the Godly Emperor. However, the battle between Qin Yu and Yi Xiaoning at the martial gathering of the gods had left Sun Shiyu in awe. Yi Xiaoning's strength was definitely at the martial monarch realm. However, Qin Yu had defeated Yi Xiaoning without relying on his spiritual puppet skeleton. Most importantly, it had only been half a year since he had returned from the 7 great martial gatherings. Qin Yu's cultivation had risen from the 7th layer martial progenitor realm to the 2nd cycle of the nirvana realm. Such astonishing progress made Sun Shiyu feel a sense of urgency that she had felt before even more intense. Qin Yu's talent was most likely on par with hers. I have my reasons, but it's not for the ancient heavenly Qilin. Chenyu did not mention anything about the dragon tribe. Although the ancient heavenly Qilin was an ancient godly beast, the value of a real dragon was on par with the ancient heavenly Qilin. The golden flames heaven-incinerating dragon was only an infant because of the prophecy left by the three martial progenitors. Therefore, the Sky Emperor Palace had not brought it back from the ancient imperial palace. If the Sky Emperor Palace learned about the dragon tribe, they might interfere too. Sun Xiu nodded and did not ask any further. According to her understanding of Chenyu, since Chenyu had said so, then even if she continued to ask, she would definitely not get an answer. As for Chenyu's motive, she would know once she went to the void dimension. A while later, footsteps were heard. Shi Tiangang strode forward with his head held high. Behind Shi Tiangang, 15 figures followed. Other than Shi, Jingtian, and Chenyu, the other 14 Taoists were unfamiliar with them. They seemed to be the same age as Sun Xiu and Shi Jingtian, but their cultivations had reached the martial emperor realm. Obviously, they were all talented people. Among the 14 people, 2 of them should have awakened the bloodline of the 3 sovereigns. Chenyu sensed unique bloodline fluctuations from them. As for the other 12 people, Chenyu was rather concerned about them. This was because their auras were actually faintly fused together, as if they were one. Shun Feng is also going to the southern region. Shi Jingtian was surprised to see Chenyu, who was a martial ancestor, present. Surprise flashed through the eyes of the 2 descendants of the 3 emperors. It was said that the trip to the southern region was extremely dangerous. Therefore, the other young martial emperors in the palace who were weaker did not go out. They only sent a few martial emperor elites. Wouldn't Shun Feng, a mere martial progenitor, be a burden if he were to tag along? Everyone is here. Let's go. Shi Tiangong's gaze paused on Chenyu, ignoring the doubts of Shi Jingtian and the others. He led the younger generation of martial emperors to the teleportation hall. 2 hours later, in the southern region's fiendish demon sea, a white light tore through the sky and appeared in the sky above the fiendish demon sea. It was Shi Tiangang and the others. At the same time, in the deepest part of the fiendish demon sea, 100-foot wide spatial crack appeared in the meteorite area that Chenyu had previously explored. Vast and astonishing spatial fluctuations were being emitted from the spatial crack. With that spatial fissure as the center, the sky, and the ground, thousands of li in radius were filled with people at a glance. At this moment, the strength of the forces was clearly displayed. The central area was basically occupied by the various major forces. The weaker the forces, the further back they were. As for those on the ground, there were basically people with no background or small forces. Fairy Shuilan has indeed been here. After following Shi Tiangang into the central area, the dragon soul sensed for a moment and said, from the spatial crack, the dragon soul sensed the unique fluctuations of Fairy Shuilan's Tao. It was exactly the same as the Tao in the blood mist demon stream. Chenyu also sensed it carefully and quickly understood. Why was it that only the younger generation of martial emperors could enter the empty space? This void space was sealed by Fairy Shuilan's mysterious Tao. The power was so strong that Chenyu felt that it was even stronger than when he was at his peak. Could it be that Fairy Shuilan has broken through the limit of the Emperor realm and left the heaven region? Thinking back to the blood mist demon stream and how Fairy Shuilan had said that she would not return, Chenyu could not help but have such a thought. Fairy Shuilan's origin was a mystery and her Tao was special. This was not impossible. Speaking of which, why would there be such a huge commotion when this void space appeared? Don't you know? I heard that the sacrificial evil god dynasty wanted to force Emperor Realm Masters into this void space. As a result, they triggered a barrier. It is said that the sacrificial evil god dynasty seriously injured several Emperor Realm Masters. Because of this, I wonder who was the person who left this Tao restriction in this void space. Even an Emperor Realm Master suffered a backlash. I don't know, but it is definitely a peak Emperor Realm Master. Maybe it was left behind by an ancient master. The treasures hidden in this void space sealed by such a master are definitely extraordinary. Unfortunately, only the younger generation with a suitable bone age can enter. The treasures inside are not for us at all. That's right. This time, many major forces have already come. Even a few of the 7 top forces and 10 superpowers have come. They might even gather together. We can't compete with those monsters who are on the battle ranking. If that's the case, this void space is a warm-up for the war ranking competition in 2 months. As more and more cultivators gathered, the sound of discussions rang out incessantly. Sacrificial, evil god dynasty? Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul, who were sensing the void space, heard the discussion of the sacrificial evil god dynasty. Terrifying killing intent surged in their hearts. The ancient evil god emperor of the sacrificial evil god dynasty was one of the 12 ancient emperors that Xing Luo had joined forces with. Thousands of years had passed. Qin Yu did not expect that the sacrificial evil god dynasty had moved from the East Continent to the spiritual state. I remember now. Isn't the old man who fought with Pan Hong from the sacrificial evil god dynasty? The Dragon Soul seemed to have suddenly remembered something and shouted, "It's him." Qin Yu's expression changed. After thinking about it carefully, the killing intent in his heart grew stronger. The black-clothed old man who fought with Pan Hong was not only from the sacrificial evil god dynasty. Back in the immortal god graveyard, he assisted the 12 ancient emperors and Xing Luo to set up the absolute heaven array to seal him. However, Qin Yu's main target was Xing Luo and the 12 ancient emperors, so he did not pay attention to the black-clothed old man. Chapter 347. When I saw him that day, I felt that he looked familiar. The Dragon Soul said with murderous intent. That day, when they saw that Pan Hong had also reached the Emperor realm, they had neglected the old man. So, the people from the sacrificial evil god dynasty should be here too. The murderous intent in Qin Yu's heart was like a raging river, but he didn't show it on his face. He quietly observed the surrounding forces. Suddenly, Qin Yu's gaze paused. A few hundred meters away from them, a group of people in black gathered. It was the symbol of the sacrificial evil god dynasty. Qin Yu didn't stare at them. After sweeping his gaze over the people from the sacrificial evil god dynasty, he retracted his gaze. The murderous intent in his heart was also quietly withdrawn. Speaking of which, Pan Hong and the people from the sacrificial evil god dynasty couldn't be the same as Long Hao, right? At this moment, a look of contemplation flashed in the Dragon Soul's eyes. Pan Hong has a calm temperament. He should know that he has no chance of winning against the sacrificial evil god dynasty, so he won't act rashly. Qin Yu didn't see through Pan Hong's specific cultivation that day, but it was far from the level of the ancient emperors. With Pan Hong's character, even if he wanted to avenge him, he should first conserve his energy. If I had known, I would have met Pan Hong directly last time. The Dragon Soul still felt that the battle between Pan Hong and the people from the sacrificial evil god dynasty had something to do with Qin Yu. At this time, the fewer people who know my identity, the safer it will be. Whether it is for us or for those who know my identity, it is the same. Hearing this, Qin Yu said, Star Luo and the 12 ancient emperors would definitely not want him to reincarnate. Once they found out about this, there was no need to say anything. What awaited him would be an earth-shattering pursuit. Whether it was his eldest senior brother, Pan Hong, Heavenly Imperial Palace, or even the entire Heaven Domain. No force could stop them if they joined forces. Therefore, before he recovered the cultivation of his previous life, Qin Yu's identity had to be kept a secret. Although he would repay the debt of his previous life with blood, he had to have a plan. The reason Qin Yu wanted to create Eternal Dragon was to prepare for his revenge. Heavenly Imperial Palace, Sage Divine Dynasty, Ancient Cold Island. 3 of the 7 top forces have arrived. Qin Yu looked around and found the people from the sacrificial evil god dynasty. Because of the arrival of Sky Emperor Palace, the cultivators of countless forces were engaged in heated discussions. Sky Imperial Palace is indeed a top force. They have 14 young martial emperors. Sun Shiyu, one of the four ghosts, is here as expected. The sky prides around Sun Shiyu are all-powerful. I'm afraid they're strong enough to make it to the battle roll. Why is there a martial ancestor here? Martial ancestor realm? No way. Why would the Heavenly Imperial Palace send a martial progenitor to such an occasion? Isn't this guy the monster who caused a ruckus at the martial gathering of the three divine dynasties in the southern region? That's right. It's indeed this young man who has suppressed the entire martial progenitor realm of the southern region to the point where no one dares to challenge him. He's undefeatable among the martial progenitors. So he's going to challenge a martial emperor? Due to the martial gathering of the southern region divine dynasty, Qin Yu's reputation in the Heavenly Imperial Palace had surpassed that of Shi Jingtian and the others who were at the martial emperor realm. He was comparable to Sun Shiyu. Regardless of the era, those who were undefeatable among the same rank were rare talents that only appeared once every few hundred years. Furthermore, Qin Yu is undefeatable among those who were at a higher cultivation level. Such an existence was even rarer. This guy has completely trampled on all the martial progenitors in the southern region. His reputation has spread far and wide. Zhou Wen exclaimed in the Sage Divine Dynasty, one of the top 7 forces. The martial gathering that the 3 divine dynasties of the southern region had prepared had turned out to be Qin Yu's stepping stone to fame. It can't be helped. The martial progenitors in the southern region are weaker than him. In the Wuliang Divine Dynasty, one of the top 10 forces near the Sage Divine Dynasty, Qin Yuming was calm. In the past 2 months, the news about Qin Yu had spread like wildfire in the southern region. It was difficult for anyone to not know about it. However, is the Heavenly Imperial Palace really going to send him to the empty space? In the Heavenly Spirit Divine Dynasty, one of the top 10 forces, a strange look flashed across Yi Tianyu's eyes. There was no doubt that Qin Yu's combat talent was undefeatable among the martial progenitors. However, in the martial emperor realm, it was nothing. Right now, Qin Yu had already revealed his abilities. Who knew how many powers had already set their eyes on him? Not to mention others, even the 3 divine dynasties would not mind getting rid of Qin Yu if they had the chance. Perhaps they just brought him here to broaden his horizons. Zhou Wen and Qin Yuming were also skeptical about this. The Heavenly Sun Holy Land is here. At this moment, Zhou Yuan's expression changed as he tilted his head to look at the horizon. A golden-purple flame flickered in the sky as if it had traveled through the void. In an instant, it had arrived at the center of the fiendish demon sea. It was a 3-legged golden crow that was burning with raging flames. However, the flames on the 3-legged golden crow were golden purple and looked noble and extraordinary. Many forces that had arrived at the center of the area could not help but retreat. Although the purple-gold flames were not targeted at them, just approaching them was enough to make their hair stand on end. They could not stay for long. It was the ancient demonic beast, the purple-gold 3-spirit crow. This was the saint beast of the Heavenly Sun Holy Land, one of the top forces. Its power was enough to crush ordinary Emperor Realm Masters. Yi Tianyu's eyes narrowed slightly. His natal fire seed was completely suppressed in front of the purple-gold 3-spirit crow. The purple-gold 3-spirit crow was a pure descendant of the golden crow and could be considered a Xiantian life form. In front of his fire Dao ability, there were very few fire seeds that weren't suppressed. There were more than 10 figures standing on the back of the purple-gold 3-spirit crow. Although there were venerable sovereigns among the dozen or so people, the most eye-catching one was a burly young man surrounded by purple flames. Mysterious fire runes appeared on the young man's face. His aura was one with the purple-gold 3-spirit crow, and his power was shocking. Tang Mingxin, seeing the burly young man, Sun Shiyu and Zhou Yuan's eyes were filled with fighting spirit. Tang Mingxin, one of the 4 great sages, the holy son of the Heavenly Sun Holy Land. Although Tang Mingxin was a rising star in the last war ranking. However, he had been famous in the spiritual state for a long time. because Tang Mingxin had an innate fire god body. Among the many emperor physiques, the innate fire god body was definitely the top emperor physique. In the history of the heavenly realm, there had been two fire gods. One was born in the ancient times, and the other could be traced back to the ancient times. As for the rumors of the two fire gods, there was very little information that could be confirmed. However, there was one thing that was truly recorded. The two fire gods were both innate fire god bodies. In the long history of the heavenly realm, there had been countless emperor realm masters. However, it was extremely rare to be able to be crowned with the words immortal or god after becoming an emperor realm master. Each of them was a peak existence of an era. Tang Mingxin had such an emperor physique, so he was naturally a famous genius in the spiritual state. His reputation was even above Sun Xiyu and Zhou Wu Yuan. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.